Let's get ready to RPG!
RPG! RPG! RPG! RPG! RPG!
Hey, what's up, everybody? How's it going? Yeah, it's late. It's Friday night. Well, technically, it's Saturday morning. No random numbers. Damn, this is a super late stream. Oh, no, 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 no. We stream when the streaming gods will it. Oh, what's up? Hey, Brian, thank you. Oh, it's Whipple. What's up, Whipple? Oh, I gotta fix my chat. Let me get my 9:25. Okay, there we go. What's up, everybody? What's up, Zen Bullet? By the way, buddy, thank you for resubbing at Hero. I noticed that. I appreciate you. Thank you. Actually, hold on a sec here. Okay, I just wanted to make sure I can hear my headphones. Remember Pathfinder 2? I kid. No, but seriously, remember Pathfinder 2? What a game. What's going on? Hey, what's up, London? Good to see you. Hey, is everybody subscribed to London's channel? You should be. I also think, generally speaking, I think London tries to stream on days when I don't stream. So there's no reason not to watch, I think. All spells re-ranked. Look, can we just call it even? Just give everything. You know what? I'm willing to let bygones be bygones. Let's just give everything a C, and then just give heal S triple plus. You know, and we'll just call it even. Oh, and disappearance. Correct, Platinus. No, well, the last month, I haven't really streamed much. My income was down about 30% or something, 40%. Because obviously a lot of my income comes from tips and super chats and all that other stuff and the fun stuff like that. Again, I'm not complaining. It's far better than chasing views. I've talked before about how I have like almost nothing in common with any of the content creators, the other dungeon tubers, and that would be one of the huge ways about it. Well, Agile Monk, I kind of ignored a lot of people. When I have a guest on, I try not to read the chat as much, because I try to pay attention, quite frankly, I try to pay attention to my guest, because when we're in a normal chat like this, like the two instances where I tend not to focus on chat as much are when I have a guest or when I have, or if I'm doing a first look, right? And I'm really trying to actually pay attention to the PDF that's open in front of me. I do that because number one, in the case of a first look, I do want to give the content the attention it deserves. And then obviously when I have a guest, I try to pay attention to them. But in situations like this, that's why I have a teleprompter. And it's why I have my chats. It's a big part. I mean, in case you haven't noticed, by the way, not saying like this is not like my thing. It's not like I didn't even make it, right? I found it. But almost every YouTuber that you see who uses this, like Dungeon Tuber, got it from me. So like Evan uses this, got it from me. Trevor from Me, Myself, and Die uses this, got it from me. Again, I'm not like trying to like flex on him. I think it's a great tool. In fact, I try to impress upon everybody that I meet that I think the power of a live stream over, say, a 10-minute or a 12-minute video is that I can immediately answer questions about concepts that maybe I didn't explain as well, or that need further detail. And obviously, we can also go on these crazy tangents and all this other stuff. But yeah, what's up, Jake? Thank you for the Prime subby. Yeah, well, it's been a while. Not only have I not been streaming as much because I've been on the road a lot, but when I was streaming, it was typically like at a very maybe even like an earlier time because of it had to fit in the schedule. Usually I was streaming from GaryCon or Gamma or or Vegas. So streaming at like our fun midnight streams wasn't really an option because usually if I'm working at a convention, I'm pretty dead tired. Unfortunately. Well, Agile Monk, I'm glad to hear it. You know that I do respect the hell out of you. You called me his best salesperson. I think Mark is still Stephen Glicker's best salesperson. Although now we'll see. Now Glicker's new muse is Diana of the Rose, right? Diana Faye, and she's been doing all of his Eldamon. Well, I think a lot of his advertising.
Apex tipped $15. Missed the last couple streams live, but I'd love to hear more about Shadow Deep and more chats with Evan.
Yeah, well, obviously we crushed those goals, so we're definitely going to be doing that. Jackal.
Moons tipped $5. Hungry Shadows design stream.
Hungry Shadows design stream. Well, I could say that the real-time torches might work really well with Hungry Shadows. By the way, that was a Shadow Dark X Hungry Hippos game that we were talking about today on the Knights. This is why people join the Knights of Last Call and why they join the Patreon, is so that they could discuss Hungry Hippos and Shadow Dark as a game design. They do it on purpose, Pumpkin, so that you don't actually use it. Oh, right. Written by Werner Herzog and spoken by Werner Herzog. Thank you, London, for that, by the way. Yeah, she is super, super nice. I've met her a couple times, mostly at PAX, I think. But I've never, I haven't played any games with her or anything like that. But she's young and she likes the gaming, and I respect that. So it's all good. I get it. That's just the game, the game that we play. Pretty cute girls hawking games, right? Where's my money, Steve? What are we even doing here? I am, one of the things I love about being a YouTuber is that 90% of what I wear is just my own merch. Because I always have extra T-shirts and all this other stuff. It's good stuff. Who's Steve? Steve is Steve Glicker. Stephen Glicker. From Roll for Combat. So that's right. So I think next week I do see some people hyping it up. We've got Whoople, we've got Shoefix. Speaking of Pathfinder 2, we have NR coming soon. So and I think again, this is a late night stream. We could talk about anything, and we could talk about Shadow Deep and stuff. Apex, by the way, I do want to circle back to that. There was. A lot of people talk about mega games. It's kind of a joke, like, oh, launch a mega game. I cannot stress enough that the only reason that mega games happen, in particular Northern Reaches, is because of the incredible amount of work that goes into them. And in the past, this was done by Bob and Smith, and I paid them, and as part of their channel, as part of their channel duties. And then that was taken over by a very, 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 very dedicated, even more dedicated than the people I used to pay, a group that we call the Council. And there was a lot of discussion about whether NR would even happen this year, because, the Council takes their job very seriously, and we really wanted to make sure that timetables lined up. We didn't want to launch too late because it could screw up the schedule. And, there was questions about whether or not we were going to be able to get all the work done. And if you've been to northernreaches.org, then that the Council, this is probably the biggest revision to Northern Reaches that we've ever done. even bigger than say season 1 to season 2, because Northern Reaches is going into basically an entirely new game. It doesn't cut itself off from the past. It keeps those ties, and I'm excited because it's kind of going back to, kind of Northern Reaches the way that I envisioned it, which is a little bit more frontier, a little bit more wild, a little bit more feral. And I like this. I think the zone design I had a lot of discussions, a lot of the stuff that I had thought about doing for like Dagger Reaches, or things like that. And they have implemented those designs beautifully. So I'm really excited, which is basically to say creating different areas of play that really highlight and reference certain styles of play. Northern Reaches and our community that plays it has changed, and the game was kind of lagging behind that. And so what the council has managed to do is, I think, take really, really good steps towards updating Northern Reaches to be where the player base is at, instead of trying to force them into a play style that maybe isn't best for them. So anyways, I think next week we're going to do a Northern Reaches hype stream. We're going to have some of the council members on, as many as want to be on. I'm sure we'll talk about PF2 as well, but your Eldamon stream earned you your first dislike. Well, listen, all engagement is good engagement. I'll say that. Glicker, he has his tendrils into everything. I'll say that, he definitely knows a lot. Happy to have him in my corner for sure. Plus, you get the fun perks like, oh, he won the auction to go to Wizards of the Coast and to meet all the designers and play in some exclusive adventures and get your characters published into a D&D module. Oh, I'm locked to go. Cool. I'm not saying that there doesn't come with fringe benefits, Has my StarCraft arrived yet? No. The pre-order ends April 17th. I imagine that they will not start shipping until after the pre-order window closes. And so I would expect to get it in May. But I did place my order. So I bought the all-in player package. So it comes with basically one of everything for both Terran, or for Terran, Protoss, and Zerg. Everything that comes in the core set, plus one of each of the expansion boxes. So in theory, I have access to every unit, and I think I get double. Like I'll get 2 units of Zerglings, 2 units of Zealots, 2 units of Marines. I'll get an Artanis, a Jim Raynor, a Kerrigan, a Pylon, all that other stuff. Hey, speak of the devil, and he shall appear. Just call me Daddy. Daddy Glicker. Oh yeah, it was. I mean, you should have expected nothing less. I mean, it was a whole thing. Let's just put it this way. It was classic Glicker, all the way. Up to and including the fact that he kind of was like, yeah, I wasn't really paying. He's like, I really didn't know how much I was bidding. And then it just kind of happened. And I'm like, well, I'm not losing. And he's like, I've got plans. That's the key thing. If you've read Dune, but especially if you've watched the David Lynch version of Dune, they really reference plans within plans a lot. They'll be like plans within plans. And that is Stephen Glicker to the nth degree. Plans within plans. But yes. No, Agile Monk, she's hip, she's young, she's cool. She's Gen Z. She's hip to P square. Like, for example, I actually there's 2 things that have happened recently. And by the way, it's not like I don't swear. I swear on my own channel. But there were 2 things that happened recently that I thought at first, like a lot of, older generation people were clutching their pearls. One happened during the Olympics, right? Where Alyssa Liu, actually her name is pronounced Elisa, and it's Liao. But anyways, Alyssa Liu, as we say here in North America. But Elisa Liao, when she didn't even know, by the way, that she had won the gold medal yet. When she finished her incredible long program, she skated off and right into the camera was like, let's fucking go. Or no, she said, that's what I'm fucking talking about. And it was like, a lot of people were like, whoa, goodness. And I was like, no, that, listen, curse words are not as curse words anymore as they used to be. And then separately, just the other day with the Artemis 2 launch, there was a young kid, and they asked him, why are you here? Like, why are you so excited? And he was like, we're going to the fucking moon, And I was like, yeah, we are. And that is awesome. And that is the response, So I thought that was really great. So yeah, I basically love everything about her. I think she's exactly what, I'm a huge Olympics fan, and I just love everything about it, Anyways, I thought she was great. The hockey, everything. This Winter Olympics was absolutely incredible. Up and down. Yeah, game blouses. I know, right? Pumpkin, I just remember just a few short years ago, Pumpkin was just a nerdy, perennially online loser. And then suddenly, he outgrew Pathfinder 2, and then boom, gets a girlfriend immediately, gets engaged. I don't know what that says about Pathfinder 2 and or Northern Reaches, but there we have it. I kid, of course. Pumpkin says, StarCraft seems cool, but I just spent $120 on Raw, so I told my fiance I won't purchase anything tabletop for a few months, lol. Besides, I don't think there's much of a wargaming scene around me. Oh, no, don't be surprised. There is almost certainly a wargaming scene around you. You do have to sort of find it. Now, the question is, will they be playing anything other than Warhammer 40K? That is a great question. Because to be completely honest with you, StarCraft's best hope is to be, Call of Cthulhu or Shadow Dark or, probably not even Pathfinder 2, But I was like, I got to step over my dog here real quick. But Pumpkin, your choice in board games is in fact excellent. I own Raw, and I bought this again. It's one of my favorite games of all time. So, and I thought the reprint looked beautiful with all the heavy bits, and it looks great. So I bought it because, yeah, Raw. Reiner Knizia. Outside of Mark Rosewater, Mark Rosewater, I guess Gary Gygax, Dave Arneson, Uwe Rosenberg, Reiner Knizia is like in competition for me for the GOAT, Are Eldamon compatible with Nimble? I'm going to say yes, because Eldamon, there's 5e, so there is 5e Eldamon, but according to Evan, you could play a totally normal 5e character with Nimble characters. So, yes. Oh no. Well, that does happen. Any day now. No, there's nothing wrong with Pathfinder 2nd Edition. I think that for like having character build options that have mechanically, even if they're not the most like incredibly powerful mechanical effects, for like sheer number of different mechanical build options, you really cannot beat Pathfinder 2nd Edition. And to my general experience, it is probably the most tightly tuned, like, encounter building math type game that maybe I've ever seen. I am genuinely shocked how many times you could throw 4 or 5 completely basically random PCs of different classes and builds at what essentially at a PL0 encounter or PL+1 encounter, and it basically kind of, works out the way that you expect it to. And I'll caveat that by saying that, yes, there are games that can also play out very well, as the quote unquote encounter math suggests. But when you consider the complication, or I should say the complexity of a Pathfinder 2nd Edition character and the complexity of a Pathfinder 2nd Edition monster, it does become rather impressive, because these are not simple encounter stat blocks, right? These aren't like, oh, it's a creature, it has an attack and it has one special attack, Turns out that's a lot easier to balance than everything else, or if you take a game like Daggerheart, where it's like, well, if you fuck up the encounter balance, the players can just avoid death, But so I do really respect it for that. I will say that for me, right, since the whole character build aspect of Pathfinder 2 is lost on me, I have sort of, shrunk away from it a bit. But yeah, I'll say that. And I also think that, if you want to think about encounter-based design, Pathfinder 2 is also, pretty top notch. I personally don't think Pathfinder 2 does, sort of ablative resource drain type mechanics very well. I mean, I've seen a lot of people make a lot of house rules and a lot of subsystems and all that other stuff, jumping through a lot of hoops, just to put pig on a lipstick, or lipstick on a pig on a lipstick. But I don't think it does that particularly well. In fact, one of the reasons why I really like Eldamon is because Mark essentially designed a spellcasting system that is more or less entirely designed around the encounter, which is, I think, what you should be doing. TLDR. I mean, I think at this point, the weakest component of Pathfinder 2 is the Vancian, the legacy Vancian spell slot systems. I think that's the one thing that really, holds it back for sure. But again, I think, Mark and I, was it Mark? Yeah, Mark and I were just talking about Eldamon the other day, and I was describing how, one of the things that I absolutely love with Eldamon is that you have this interesting, if you've ever played Gloomhaven, you know that your powers get used once and then they go to a discard pile, and then you can refresh, and then you get all your powers back -1. It gets randomly shuffled away. But you're basically taking a turn off to do that. And so there's this kind of tension behind, because the idea, like optimally, you would try to use every single one of your powers before you refreshed. But sometimes you might really need a power again. And, you have to kind of take a turn off, so to speak, to refresh your powers. And the Eldamon refresh powers are really cool in that they aren't as powerful as, say, doing a normal attack. However, if you play the element well, you can have a really, really effective turn, even though that turn is supposed to be you taking the turn off. So let me give you an example. If you have the fire element, which most notably usually comes from a squirrel ash, right? Which is or squirrel ember, I guess. And they do fire damage, but they don't just do fire damage. That's one of the cool things about the elements in Eldamon, is they have this thing that makes them feel very appropriate. And in this case, fire does a lot of persistent fire damage, aka it lights them on fire. And you also have some really cool powers. One is called, I think it's called Fan the Flames, which is a cone that can basically, if it hits somebody who is on fire, it spreads it to all the other people in the cone. So the fire element, there's sort of this mini game, right? There's this sub game where you're trying to light everybody on fire. And it kind of even extends to the rest of your party, who, if they can light people on fire, so much the better. So when you start running out of your fire powers, the Fire Eldamon has to take a refresh where they sort of, replenish their flames. And it's kind of like taking a turn off, except when you do this, all of your enemies that are currently on fire with persistent fire damage take another pulse of fire damage, which means, and I was telling this to Mark, there was a combat once where I needed to refresh, and I think between myself and the party, I think one of my fellow PCs had lit somebody on fire using one of their own powers, independent of Eldamon, and I had managed to then light a bunch of people on fire. I took my refresh power, and I think I pinged, an extra pulse of persistent fire damage on like 3 or 4 enemies. And that was like me taking my turn off. So it felt very powerful and very effective. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay. So if I play this class well, I get rewarded. And that is extremely, extremely powerful to me, Yeah. It's like the recall workers action. Exactly. But if you could build your engine well, when you recall workers, you might get an extra bonus. And I think that's what's really cool about it. So I'm a big fan of Eldamon. I think it's really awesome. I sell a bunch of it at cons, and I do it despite the fact that I think, like Boothby, I think it's so good, even though I hate that it's cute coded. Right? I don't like Pokemon. I don't like the whole befriend them all aspect. I don't like any of that. But it's so good mechanically. I think it's fantastic. Sorry if I'm missing anything. By the way, I do need to answer Apex questions. So Apex, TLDR, definitely going to have Evan back on. I don't, again, he kind of was like, hey, Derek, you should build a dungeon for me. And I was like, okay, I kind of agreed to it. Things are going really well, and Evan's really cool, and I'm happy to work with him. He's a really cool guy, and it's crazy to think that he has so little experience. I think he's legitimately only played 5th edition D&D. So, obviously, and Nimble. And that's just like crazy to me. So, one of my goals is to try to like get Evan and have him play other games. But you know what? But it could ruin him. So it could destroy him. As it has destroyed me. And I didn't mean to like glaze him up too much, but I do think that his perspective is very cool, which is that he's coming at it not from a vibe standpoint, which is what I think a lot of people do when they become designers. They come at it with a very, not to self-reference our own stuff here, but a lot of people come into it and they're very like Phoenix oriented, right? Like they've got this like really cool idea and they want to make a game to explore that idea, which is fine, but it means that your motivation is expressing your idea of your vision, and that means that you tend to not you can get biased, right, by your love for that thing, whereas Evan is coming at this very much from a how do I create the most smooth, easy, efficient, player friendly, fast-paced player experience, right? Like a lot of people are worried about the end product, and Evan is worried about the process. And I think that is what is really cool about him as a designer. And obviously I'm not like I'm obviously very aware of the process, but it's very cool for me to see a designer working through that mindset. And I think that's been really it's been really cool to see him do that. And I unfortunately, I can't catch all of his streams, mostly because the last month I've been busy so much. I've been traveling so much. And I've hopped in here and there, like on my phone. I even hopped on when I was on the plane. I was flying to Vegas and I hopped in his stream. I try to drop a super chat or whatever and say hi. But it's really cool and it's really interesting. And I'm learning stuff about the visual, graphical layout and design because Evan does it, fuck it. He does it live. And he's over there in InDesign and in Photoshop, just doing it up, and I respect the hell out of it, basically. But yeah, I think Starfinder Second Edition is another a great game. I will say, I do think it is, like maybe it's not if Pathfinder, okay, if like basic D&D or basic games are like 100 level, like I do think Pathfinder 2 is a 200 level RPG. I do not think it is baby's first RPG. I really do think that. I do not think it is a good first RPG. Sorry, Pathfinder 2. Do I think Starfinder 2 is a 300 level course, a 300 level RPG? No. But do I think it is a 201? No, I think it's like a 205. So I do think Starfinder is a little bit more complicated. Some of the classes are pretty simple, but like even the basic fighter, like the soldier is, or like the Solarian are still kind of more complicated than it would be. Draw Steel is a 300 level RPG for sure. For sure. Yeah. Definitely Shazbot. Yes, sorry. Phoenix Oriented is a long diatribe about using Legend of the Five Rings clans to express game design principles and agendas. Yeah, no, Evan's great. He's picking everything up like a sponge. Getting to meet him in person at Gamma was crazy because he was just like just trying to take everything in, and it's been really interesting to see him sort of grow, corrupt, maybe, if you want to call him corrupting. Yeah, unfortunately, listen, that is what we do, Shazbot, is we develop our own language, and that makes us cool. Well, you're not wrong, Commander Stookums. Commander Stookums says, but Evan has no defense against Derek's opinion. He is getting biased by mostly good takes, to be fair. No, but I mean, I think that is something that is to be, considered and it's appropriate. I don't want to disrupt him. I want to give him options, right? Like, I don't want to quarterback. I don't think he's going to let me, but I don't want to quarterback him in a co-op, right? I want to be like, hey, there are 3 cool things that you could do. Here are the pros and cons of each. I will let you take your turn, as you see fit. Yes, Kojo, another great point. He's also thinking about the GM experience, and that is, I think, really important as well. Zen says, I was thinking it was more like zodiac signs, and Pumpkin is correct. It basically is like zodiac signs. Zen says that stream made me rethink my Daggerheart hack. I'll have to watch it again. Interesting. I'm curious why that is. What makes Draw Steel a 300 level RPG? Is it the game being more complex? Absolutely. There's just a lot to keep track of. There's a lot of meta currencies. There's a lot of synergies. Your own character class just has a lot of buttons and knobs and levers. There's a lot of spinning plates. So you are just now Draw Steel is definitely a game that I think is complex in that there are a lot of demanding mechanical choices that are, eating up your time. It's like a really advanced game of Magic the Gathering. There's just a lot of stuff going on, and it's and you got to be thinking about, we're a far cry from, okay, make an attack, do some damage, right? It's like, okay, which power do I use? What resource am I consuming? Is there somebody, can I push him into a wall? Can I push him into something else? Can I knock him through a door? Can I knock him close to somebody else? How many zones are present on the battlefield? Yada, yada. There's a lot of stuff going on. But yeah. Yes, correct. Soldier and Solarian are definitely more complex than it. And that's skipping the Witch Warper, which quite frankly is probably too complicated to exist. I don't want to name names, but some of the people at Paizo have basically told me that the Witch Warper is too complicated to exist. So it's like, take all the complexity of a spellcaster, but then also layer on top of it this extremely complex, very difficult to functionally understand aura, system. It's quite the class. For sure. The idea of thinking about the end user. This is Zen talking about how did that make them think about their Daggerheart. I realized I dropped a lot of complexity on the players to streamline the experience for the GM. Right. Okay. So, that's Zen. We talked about that. Speaking of, the other stuff here is, we talked about crane-based design. And one of the key elements of crane-based design is that you are willing and able to put a lot of work on the players, right? That the players, you're not just keeping them out of the loop. Like, the players have to be kind of engaged, kind of involved in helping the game run. And if you have players who are either not engaged, not paying attention, don't care, don't know the rules, the game will suffer as a result of that. And so, like, you know, for me, that is something that I don't shy away from that in my own designs, because I just naturally assume the players are going to be leaning in and are interested in the game. It is very weird to me to think about playing a role-playing game and being like, what's going on? I don't even know, man. I'm just here to vibe. That's just not the way I think about pretty much any game. So it's very strange for me to do that. Obviously, I have a lot of experience with Bob, but I even think Bob has kind of come along a little bit to my style thinking, unless he's getting drunk. So, let's see. Yes, the darkest of arcane secrets. The dark wisdom will allow him to know the things that most shouldn't. Well, yeah, I mean, I've been playing these games for, 35 years, and Evan has not. So, I mean, but again, I scoreboard, baby, his first campaign was obviously successful, and his second campaign is over $1 million. So he is obviously doing something really successful, and I think it's awesome that he's doing it. Let's see here. Speaking of Daggerheart, checks the polls. Yes. Our finals and for March Madness is Daggerheart versus Legend in the Mist. My guess is it runs much better on a VTT. I'm not saying it's a VTT RPG, but no. Have I ever played Twilight 2000? No. We did cover it here on the stream. We did a first look, and I got to admit, it wasn't my cup of tea. I was even talking to the Free League folks, and they basically said like 80+% of people that play Twilight 2000 are ex-military. It's very popular with like ex-army, ex-marines. It's kind of it is probably the most gear/gun porn game I have ever seen, and that's saying something. Like, because I've run and played Traveler. But yeah. Is it more complex than first edition Psionics? Maybe not. Witch Warper is the one that you want to play the most. Yeah, I'm not saying the Witch Warper is wrong, but like, or you shouldn't play it. But Kojo says, I've played alongside a Witch Warper in some Starfinder Society, and it just felt complicated from the other side of the table, right? So, right. You're right. Well, so that's the difference, Outercraft, between complexity and complication. Because even if a game isn't complicated, it could still be complex. And Draw Steel, maybe you have your buttons, as you say, but there's still a ton of decisions that have to be made about how you use your resources, how to best synergize and sync up with your party members, et cetera, et cetera. And so all that technical stuff that you're talking about, it adds to the complexity element of the game, because you got to do a lot of, as Shazbot says, you have to do a lot of combat state evaluations, Well, Legend of the Five Rings is about 5,000 times cooler than Oriental Adventures, if for no other reason than it doesn't have like the unbelievable levels of like cultural appropriation, which isn't to say that Legend of the Five Rings doesn't have its moments of cultural appropriation, but it's definitely not called Oriental Adventures. So there's that. Yeah, Fabula Ultima losing to Daggerheart is the upset of the year. I mean, Daggerheart is the new hypeness, and Fabula Ultima's been around for a long time. Fabula Ultima had won, it's won in the past. I mean, it was definitely an upset. Yes, I've played MMM on occasion. No, I have played the shit out of Mutants and Masterminds. I would say Mutants and Masterminds is one of the systems I have played the most. 4th edition is in our first look queue. Maybe. Yes, Mutants and Masterminds 4th edition is in our first look queue. However, I will say I am not super excited to take a look at it because they didn't change it. It's still based off of what they've been using since first edition, which is D20 OGL. And I already own Mutants and Masterminds first edition, second edition, and third edition. I don't need another cleaned up version of Mutants and Masterminds. So I'm a little cautious and a little bit not hyped for that, you know? I have no idea on Draw Steel's Codex pricing because I have no idea what Draw Steel's Codex pricing is. So I do not know the Technomancer. The only playtest class I saw was the Mechanic, which Bob played, which sucked. So there's that. I don't, you know, hopefully they buffed it before the final release. Yeah. Blades in the Dark losing to a game I've never even heard of, but that might be me problem for missing too many streams last year. Yes, we definitely covered Legend of the Mist. I think we covered it twice, and I could be wrong, but I think it won a Golden Knight. I think it won a Golden Knighty. What is my preferred Legend of the Five Rings edition? Easy peasy 5e. I don't think the first through fourth editions, the old roll and keep setting, it's just boring to me. I mean, it's just whatever. It's just another system. For me, Legend of the Five Rings fifth edition does something very distinct, very unique. It is not just a, here's a trad simulationist game of magical Oriental samurai. It is a Bushido. It is a Bushido simulated. It's a Bushido emulation engine, and I think it is really incredible. I love that it adds so much narrative context to the game. I love that it shifts from rings or stats to rings or approaches. Almost everything it does, I really love. Now the game is underbaked. It just is. Fantasy Flight games. Some of the elements of the game are poorly laid out, underdeveloped, undeveloped. The game has problems. Unfortunately, we'll probably never see a 6th edition, or a revision, but who knows? We'll see. Yeah. I am still subbed to MCDM, but yeah. I don't know if is it a subscription? Is it a one-time paying? I don't know. I thought we covered it twice. I could be wrong, but any coverage or review of Symbaroum? No, we've never covered Symbaroum. This is one of those games that I think well, no, that's not true. I was gonna say I own the book, but I don't own the PDF. I don't actually have the PDF, but one of the cool things about Free League is Free League sends us all their PDFs for free. So technically, I do have access to Symbaroum. This was one of the first Free League books I bought. I think it's a beautiful book. I think it's really cool. I don't know that I'm jumping over the moon to play it. It's kind of like Vaesen. I think Vaesen in theory is cool. I think it looks really great. I love the art of what's his name? Johan Egelkans or whatever. It's just that, Nordic Call of Cthulhu isn't as much my vibe. And Symbaroum has kind of this it's kind of like dark forest fairy tale vibe to it, kind of. It's kind of like Dolmenwood in a way. And that maybe just isn't 100%. In fact, it kind of actually feels very much like Dolmenwood in that respect, actually. But yeah. I was trying to think of this. What's the name of this? I rode this roller coaster once at Six Flags in Virginia, and it was called something with the forest, but it was a German name, and I don't remember what it was called. But I'll check here. Roller coaster. Maybe it's closed down now. Six Flags. I think it was Six Flags or Busch Gardens. Maybe it was Busch Gardens. Busch Gardens. I think it was Williamsburg. It's called Verbolten. Was the name of the roller coaster. But I remember that roller coaster had sort of like a dark forest vibe. Yes, Verbolten. Oh, it's I guess it's got it's gotten renewed. And they I guess they renewed it. But anyways, it's through the Black Forest. Yeah, okay. So that's what I thought. It was. I can't believe I remember that. That was a long time ago. Well, they were at GaryCon, I can tell you that. They were running games there. Steven Clicker played in Fabula. Unfortunately, GaryCon, not exactly, I think, Fabula Ultima's core audience. Let's just say that. Jackal says, early access, I don't know what that means. Oh, 90 day. Anyways, those are your prices. I don't know. It seems fairly not, fairly fine. Whatever. If you're going to play the game, I mean, just pay it, whatever. Sorrel, how do you feel about Pirate Borg? I recently got my all-in pledge from Kickstarter. So I know the Limithron folks really well. I know Luke, I know Tyler. And they're at all the same cons, and I've talked with them a bunch. And the Borg games are not for me. And I think Pirate Borg has sort of grown outside of what the Borg framework was. I haven't asked him about it. It'd be one of those things that I'd hate to put him on the spot, but I wonder if he knew what was going to happen, would he have just made his own game system? That being said, there are things about Pirate Borg that I don't fully understand why they're in the game. Like there are pretty detailed ship rules, and I find that to be very strange. People love it, and that's cool. Obviously, people love pirates. My view of pirates is a little bit different, which is why with Pirates of Shadowtide, I'm sort of going more like swashbuckling Saturday morning cartoon show. Sort of Sinbad, The Voyages of Sinbad, Pirates of Darkwater cartoon show, maybe Pirates of Caribbean, more like heroic characters rather than sort of like scum of the earth. That's not a vibe that I really like. But the Pirate Borg people are all in on it, and it's doing incredibly well. So I've not done a Symbaroum first look. Is Legend of the Five Rings compatible with anything else? No, it is not compatible with anything else. Not even close. It is completely its own system. Right here. This is every book that's been released for 5th edition so far. Theoretically, there is one more book. We Are Owed is a Scorpion Clan book. I didn't think we were even going to get a dragon and a phoenix book, a dragon and a unicorn book, but we did get a dragon and a unicorn book. So if Damien is watching, I owe him an apology. Not yet, but he said, no, I promise you, Edge is going to deliver all the clan books. And I said, I don't think they are, but they only have one to go. Yeah, I mean, the thing about the Borg games is the same thing about Shadowdark. Again, I don't want to turn this into a Shadow Deep dungeon. I mean, we can. It doesn't matter. But there is an aesthetic of play at work in those games, a play pattern that I don't vibe with. Basically, it's mostly based off of like. It's very low mechanical. It's very. It's all about like just vibes and fun. Mirth and mayhem, as Dragonbane would say. And believe it or not, that's not what I like. It's not what I like in a game. So yeah. I do love the glow in the dark stuff. Again, Q Workshop. I've brought these up on stream before. Q Workshop, I believe it's Q Workshop, is releasing a Mines of Moria dice set. And they do glow in the dark. And it's like like the Doors of Durin, right? How they're made of oh my god, I'm having a brain fart. Ithelmar? Is that what it's called? Ithelmar? I gotta look this up. Ithelmar. No, that's Ithelmar is from Warhammer. Shit. Ithelmar is basically like Mithril from Warhammer. Fuck. It's Ithil something. Ithildin. No, is that it? Maybe. Metal writing. What's it called? Ithildin. Okay, yeah. All right. Sorry, I got distracted. Ithildin is a magical. It's a special type of material that the elves make out of mithril, and it only glows in. It's only visible under starlight and moonlight. Anyways, and that's what the Doors of Durin are made out of. And anyway, so these Mines of Moria dice, the 6 shows the Doors of Durin, and it glows. It's glow in the dark, which I think is pretty sweet, actually. Have I read the Unicorn book? I have flipped through it, but I haven't dived deep into it. I love Legend of the Five Rings and I love the lore, but it's just so not a top priority, for me right now. No, there is no mechanical overlap, at least in the newer editions, Travis. The old, the first edition of 7th Sea and 1st through 4th editions of Legend of the Five Rings all used the same D10 roll and keep system. But I'll be quite honest with you, I didn't hate it, but I didn't really care about it, and it didn't really matter to me. So, yeah, not something I've really focused on. Make a Legend of the Five Rings Daggerheart hack. Call it Honor and Death as duality dice names. I kind of like it. That's pretty cool. Please turn this into a Shadow Deep stream. Yes, Shadow Deep stream. Finally, we can agree. I don't like Shadow Dark either. Well, no, I like Shadow Dark. I like Shadow Dark just fine because I like BXD&D, but you got to do something else with it. I don't think you can just play it. I know that sounds weird, but there's a way that people engage with those games that that's what I was talking about, the play pattern that emerges from those games that I don't think is particularly interesting. That being said, I think I agree with Outercraft, which is, most OSR games really aren't my cup of tea. The Fruitful Void, less is more, rulings over rules. I don't like that as much. Ithildin, yeah, it is correct. I looked up, and I knew it was Ithil, because Ithil is the Sindarin word for the moon. And what's interesting is that sometimes so Sindarin, there's 2 elven languages. There's Quenya and there's Sindarin. And Quenya is sort of like the original Elvish, and Sindarin was because in case you didn't know, all the elves were created, and then they made this big journey, and a big chunk of them went and sailed over the ocean and went to go live in the Blessed Realm. But a bunch of them were like, you know what? We kind of like it here. And they stayed in Middle Earth. And those elves are called, there's called a bunch of different things, but the elves that stayed are called Sindarin elves. And the elves that went across the sea are called, Sindar basically means gray elf. Boy, we're getting off on a whole tangent here, aren't we? They're called gray elves because they didn't see the light of the 2 trees of Valinor. So they're not like light elves, right? So elves that went all the way to Valinor and beheld the light of the 2 trees are called light elves. But there were other elves called the Moraquindi, which completely denied the summons of the Valar. Those are called dark elves. And so the Sindarin elves, the elves that would become the Sindarin, they answered the call. They began the journey. They just didn't make it all the way. They eventually got distracted or stopped. Some of them reached the sea and discovered that they really liked the sea, but they really liked Middle Earth. So they're called Sindar, which basically means gray or shadow elves, because they're not dark elves, but they're not light elves either. Anyways, so they ended up creating their own language, which is called Sindarin. But the other elvish language is called Quenya. And sometimes the words between Quenya and Sindarin are very similar, and sometimes they're very different. And one of those words is moon, the word for the moon. So in Sindarin, the moon is called Ithil, and in Quenya, it is called Isil. Now, the Númenóreans, which is the ancient kings of men that Aragorn is descended from, they were really in with the light elves. So they used a lot of Quenya terms. And so they were more familiar with the Quenya language. Anyways, so the other word that we should point out here is the word for the sun, which in Sindarin is called Anor, and in Quenya is called Anar. So you can see that it's very similar, Anar, Anor. And you know that the name of the sun is Anor because Gandalf says it very famously in the Fellowship of the Ring when he confronts the Balrog on the bridge of Khazad-dûm. He says, I am a servant of the secret fire, wielder of the flame of Anor. The dark fire will not avail you, flame of Udun, right? And so basically what he's saying is, I am a servant of the secret fire. I serve Eru Ilúvatar. I'm not an old man. I'm actually a powerful spirit, angelic spirit, just like you. The secret fire is what is kind of referred to as sort of the life-giving force of the universe. And then he says, I am a servant of the secret fire, wielder of the flame of Anor. He is literally saying, I wield the powers of the sun. I wield the holy, divine power of the sun. So he calls it the flame of Anor, which is basically a way of saying sunlight, the power of flame. Anyways, so he calls it Anor, but which is the Sindarin word for the sun, but the Quenya word was Anar. Now, what does this all have to do with anything? Well, when Elendil, who came to Middle Earth after the fall of Númenor, he had two sons. Now, one of these sons you already know, right? Can anyone name? Elendil had two sons. You know the name of one of them, right? He cut the ring off of Sauron's hand. And it's Aragorn's great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather, right? It's Isildur. Well, Isildur's brother was named Anarion. Okay? So if you look at that, Isildur and Anarion were the two sons of Elendil. They are named for the Quenya words for the sun and the moon. So Isildur literally means like moon child, basically. And Anarion basically means like, one of the sun. So anyways, yes, Isildur is actually named after the moon. And so the root word of Isildur, Isil, is the same word Ithil, which is used in Ithilden, which is the magical material that the elves make writing out of. So there you go. Now, Pumpkin says, Mithril is cool and all, but I'm more of a Queendalar man myself. Now, Queendalar is really cool, and I think Mithril is really neat, but I do think Queendalar is cooler. So I will +1 to Robert Jordan there, for sure. Yes, and that's why the doors are shiny, and that's why the dice that Q Workshop are making are glow in the dark. And I respect that. I thought the Flame of Anor was also a reference to one of the Elven Rings of Power. It has been surmised that may have been what he is saying. However, I think it would be rather foolish for Gandalf to announce to a Balrog that he is secretly wielding a Ring of Power. So I don't think he's doing that. But the fact that Gandalf is wielding Narya, the Ring of Fire, I wouldn't blame anybody for thinking that. And it's kind of cool to think that he's basically saying, hey, motherfucker, I'm an angel and I serve God. Also, I'm wielding the Elven Ring of Power of Fire. So your dark fire attacks aren't going to do shit to me. One, because they're dark energy and I'm immune to that because I'm a Holy Spirit and I'm backed by God. Two, because they're fire and I'm wielding the fire. And then he says, the dark fire will not avail you. Flame of Udun. He's saying, I know what you are. I know who you are. I know where you come from. I know about Morgoth. I know about Udun, which is basically like hell on earth, which is where the Balrogs came from. Yes. And by the way, somebody asked, who knows more, me or Stephen Colbert? Stephen Colbert. He knows like 10 times as much as I do. He knows all the songs of like, Tom Bombadil, and it's just, he's crazy. Hey, we wouldn't be on Twitch if we weren't getting bots. Thank you, Twitch. Right, it's a bish, I know your parents type speech. Yes, right. So Balrog was basically like, yeah, right, old man, now catch these hands. Yeah, basically. Well, in the One Ring, you're not tackling Balrog. I mean, to be clear, Zenbullet, Gandalf was like, hey, none of you can fight this thing. You all need to run away. So, yeah. I think it's awesome that the One Ring does that. Right. Fly, you fools. Let's see. Hey, thank you for the subscription with Prime. So, Shadow Deep. So as many of you know, I started a dungeon design series last year with the intent of sort of showing you the process of how I would lay things out. Because I wasn't actually going to get into the, room by room building of a dungeon. It's a lot of work. And I was more, it wasn't really about that. It was about just showing you, like, I use a bottom-up design, right? Like, how do I lay out the structure of a dungeon, right? From a mechanical perspective, from a structural perspective. And then we fill in the details and the vibes and the description later. Whereas, again, most just recently at GaryCon, I was reminded how that is very much not the way that like anybody else does things. And, from, whether it's from Arcane Library or from Limithron or from anybody else. And they all just go like, oh, I start with a cool idea. Like, what if there was like a chamber that was like, the walls were like crawling with like centipede arms, man. Like, I think of like my favorite fucking, insert heavy metal band album that Derek has never heard of, album cover. And I'm like, I want to make a room that has that kind of fucking energy, like a Dio solo, or something. Things that I don't vibe with. Anyways, but that's how a lot of people design their games, especially in the OSR. So obviously I do things very differently. I have a very methodical, dare I say, scientific approach to designing things. And that's because, again, I view the dungeon as almost as a level design, like a video game design, rather than like, let me fill this area up with a lot of cool encounters and, that kind of stuff. So that was reminded of me. But when I originally started Shadow Deep, the plan was just to show you guys the ropes and never actually develop it, because there would be a lot of work. And I, quite frankly, just didn't think it was worth it. Now, I joked at the time, because this was a year ago. Actually, by the way, well, it is now the 4th, but yesterday was the 3rd. And that was my 1-year anniversary of being laid off from my job. So I have officially been without a job for a year. So round of applause to all of you for helping me not be homeless. So at that time, when I was doing those Shadow Deep streams, I basically said something like, well, I have this pesky job that's in the way. And I don't, I would never be able to build this thing out. Well, then a lot of stuff happened. deaths in the family and all this other stuff. But amongst other things, I also lost my job. And so suddenly somebody, of course, from our community was like, so Derek, you going to make that game now? And of course, I immediately, once I was no longer working, Stephen Glicker swooped in like a hawk on a baby robin. And he was like, oh, so what you're telling me is you have a lot of free time. And then suddenly I found myself going to, I think, 7 conventions. Like it was like, go to a convention, home for like a week, week and a half, 2 weeks, and then go to another convention. Hey, Shadram, thank you. 40 months. Appreciate you. Wow, 40 months. Yep, it's been a year already. Time flies. So I just, quite frankly, I just didn't have the time to develop to that. Now, there was also this question of like, what do I actually want to do? How do I want to structure this channel? And how do I want to, structure things? And the idea of doing a dungeon didn't seem very practical to me. So I knew it was going to take a long time to develop. And quite frankly, I kind of needed money now. Not like literally now, but like I was like, okay, in 2026, I need to do something that is going to, bring in some income or has the potential to bring in some income. And a dungeon just didn't seem like it was a possibility. And quite frankly, I just didn't know if there was any money in it, like to make this big, huge, massive thing and put all this work in, all my eggs in that one basket. And then maybe it does like, $40,000, $50,000. Well, by the time you cover your art and your printing costs and your market, whatever, I might make like $10,000. Not exactly, making up for my $150,000 a year job that I lost. So not to mention the medical benefits. And so, I didn't really think about it in any real perspective. So one of the things that came up as we were sort of, joking around and teasing around was this idea of creating a Shadow Dark game. Believe it or not, creating a Shadow Dark hack was a lot more plausible than creating a dungeon, and quite frankly, infinitely more sellable. People love pirates, people love Shadow Dark, and a lot of people are going to buy something like that. Whereas not many people, really only hardcore GMs, are going to buy something like a mega dungeon. But even still, I was like, well, I don't know how I'm ever going to get the time to do this, and I don't really have like the design chops to really push this through. Well, as luck would have it, my best friend, your best friend, Aaron Smith, was also laid off from the same company that we both worked for. He just got to work there for 11 months longer than I did. And so he found himself with a month off. And I said, hey, we got together. We were meeting up for coffee and stuff. And I kind of pitched. I said, look, I don't want to put anything on you, but if you're free and you want to work on this with me, I'd love to have you work on this with me because I know you get shit done. And together I know that, you're an execution guy. I'm an idea guy. You're an execution guy. So together, like we work really well. And he said, yeah. He said, I don't know how long I'm going to have until I have to to get a job. He's got different responsibilities than me. He's got, big house with 3 kids and, all this other stuff, family and all this other stuff. So he's got real responsibilities. But he vibed what I'm vibing. And I said, look, I'm going to be traveling for the month of March. And he's like, okay, good. Well, I'm basically saying, look, before I start looking for a job, I'm going to take off the month of March. And I said, cool. He's like, so I want to work on this. And I said, okay. So he's been working at this for like the last 5 weeks. And we're going to like circle back here in the next, this next week and the weeks following to see where we're at. And I really do think that we will be able to start, alpha testing like this summer. We'll probably continue to develop it through the spring. But I think that the very first parts of it will probably be something that we'll be able to test, I'm hoping, this summer. And assuming that we can quickly iterate, maybe even do a Kickstarter this fall. That would be, what I would love to do, in time for the holidays. Now, what are our goals? I can actually completely honestly tell you. I know people go, don't put your real goal. You got to set your goal as... I saw something on Kickstarter the other day. It was in the TTRPG, the tabletop section. I think it was a board game. I don't think it was a TTRPG, and it was like 1,555,000% funded. And it's because like their funding goal was like, 1 cent or something, you know, and it got like $100,000. And I was like, I know that you're like supposed to do that, but I think it's bullshit. Anyways, the truth of the matter is that if given, by the way, that I'm splitting, you know, presumably, me and Smith I'm happy to split. Obviously, I'm happy to split the money with him 50-50, the profit, I should say. Now obviously, to be clear, Smith is very aware that our goal, which is $100,000, after you pay your fees, after you pay, your marketing. If Kickstarter or BackerKit does your marketing for you, that's a different charge and fee. If you hire an agency to do your marketing, that's a different charge and fee. Then you have to pay for everything that you don't know how to do, whether that's layout or art or any of that other stuff. If you have people who are supporting you, developing for you, independent contractors, obviously you got to pay them out of your pocket. Obviously there's people like, Kelsey Dion, you read it, it's like designed, written, and edited by Kelsey Dion. She gets to keep more of that money in her pocket. And so then you pay all that. Then you got to get the books printed. Then you got to pay tariffs. Then you got to ship them or pay a distributor to ship them for you if you don't want to do self-fulfillment. Which, depending on if you get a couple thousand books, that's a lot of UPS and FedEx packages or whatever that you're going to be sending out. So another person gets a bite, another person gets a bite. And finally, when all that's said and done, you're left with whatever is left over. Again, I'm not an expert. I certainly haven't run a Kickstarter before, but I know a lot of people who have. And, if let's say there's also advantages and like, for example, maybe the art expectations for a first-time Shadow Dark book are maybe very different, say, than the art expectations coming out of, say, a Roll for Combat book, where you have like full color art spreads on almost every single page of the book. So those things would be different. But let's just say, back envelope, you get $100,000 between fees, fees, marketing, all that other stuff. Right off the bat, you're out $10,000. Art, depending on how much you order, depending on all this, blah blah blah, you're out maybe another. Let's just make it an even $10,000. So now you're at $80,000. Depending on how many units you ship and how many books you sell, physical versus PDF, yada, yada, your fulfillment costs are going to vary greatly. But let's just say you got 2,000 backers, all who are getting a book with shipping, with printing. You're maybe looking at an all-in maybe $10,000. Times $10 times 2,000, so $20,000. So we're down to 80. So we're down to $60,000. And you pay any fines and fees. At the end, you're probably going to make $50,000, give or take. Split two ways. Me and my co-designer Smith, we each get $25,000. Now, for me, that would be fucking amazing. Because I'm able to, I have this great channel. I have you, I have my wonderful patrons. I have my trickles of incomes from Twitch Prime and a couple $100 a month from YouTube. And I get, maybe like $35 a month from my Amazon affiliate link. Some people still choose to use that. I get the little super chats, I get the little tips, it all, and then Patreon, and all adds up. And I'm able to skate by. So if you say, hey, Derek, here's $25,000 on top of that, I'm suddenly like, cool. I don't have to worry. I can max out my HSA and not worry about anything. Obviously, that's very different for my buddy Smith. So that's not only is that, like, when I say my goal, I don't mean that's my floor and I don't mean that's my ceiling. I just mean that is what we truly expect to do. Now, all that being said, that is not a life-changing amount of money. I still think it would be really, 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 really cool and awesome if we could get 2,000 backers. And even that number isn't made up. Now, I don't know where they're going to fall in terms of, PDF only, regular edition. I don't know if we'll do some sort of special cover, special collector's edition. I don't know if I don't even know what a super premium version would look like, because the game isn't designed yet. But generally speaking, I have 500 patrons. I have 500 paying patrons. I have another 1,500 non-paying patrons. I have almost 16,000 YouTube subscribers. And then, of course, there's everyone else who plays Shadow Dark, who may never have heard of us, or maybe they have heard of us, but they're not a subscriber, who might be tangentially interested because I'm not doing this. It's not like Derek's made up thing. It's attached to an existing IP. And I've made enough connections and networking that, I could probably reach out and if, maybe have to pay a little bit of money, or just, get a, as a friendly thank you. Maybe I could get someone like, Professor Dungeon Master or a Trevor Duvall or Kelsey Dion or whatever to just, to give me, an endorsement. And on top of all that, so I figured that between those numbers, and I've used some conservative math. I am an analyst, and I did do a lot of CBAs over the years. I feel pretty confident that we could get about 2,000 backers at an average pledge of $50 a pledge. So that's how we get to $100,000. And that cost breakdown, what I gave you, is how we end up with $50,000 of profit divided between me and my co-author, co-design, co-lead, Smith. And again, $25K. Great for me. Great for Smith. We'd both be very happy with that. But obviously, that's not going to allow him to not go get a job. So, anyways, this is just me talking you through all the financial stuff that is going on back here. The lore around how you run a successful crowdfunder terrifies me. Yes, it is. It is somehow far more. It's far more business-like than I would have ever dreamed. For sure. Good to see you, Jess. I haven't seen you in a while. Jess, are you home? Are you traveling? Are you stateside or are you in the Great White North? So that's level one. Now, I would love to do this. There's a lot of reasons I would love to do this. One of the reasons is my friend Stephen Glicker, has a lot of experience publishing and is going to be publishing a lot of Shadow Dark stuff. They're going to be doing their series of 3 bestiaries. They're going to be doing Deathbringer, which is sort of a Shadow Dark compatible, Shadow Dark inspired sort of variant system. And I would love to be, yes, there you go. I'm literally working on Shadow Dark right now. So, and again, because of, going to these conventions and because of the connections that I was able to make through that, I know a lot of the folks who work at the Arcane Library, and I have connections to people like, Stephen Glicker. So again, I can use that to my advantage. And that is crazy. I'm just completely. So I'm looking at my OBS screen and I'm looking at the color saturation. And now I'm looking at YouTube and I'm looking at the color saturation on YouTube. And man, I am undersaturated. YouTube must just be just absolutely brutalizing my saturation. I wonder why. I'm gonna try something real quick here. Hold on a sec here. My shirt is orange, but trust me, if I were to show you the two, hold on a sec. You guys aren't on my Patreon, but if you are, not all of you are on my Patreon is what I was trying to say. But if you are, there we go. I will highlight this and you can maybe see the difference. I put it in KLC content chat. The one on the right is my actual thing. Anyways, I'm slightly colorblind. I don't remember what I was saying. Oh, I was trying to fix I got distracted by my color and I was going to try to up my saturation a little bit. Okay. Filters. Oh, okay. There we go. I had a desaturation effect, so I turned that off. There was a weird filter on, and I was 4% less saturated. So there we go. Now that saturation's coming through. If it looks the same to you, you need to get a better monitor, or or you just don't have an eye for that type of thing. It's fine. Yes. See, look, there you go. Shadram says I look more orange. All right. That is actually very fair. That I understand that not everyone's going to see that. That is true. But I was like, what is going on? And I looked at my filter on this thing. There was a redness correction, and I'm looking at it right here, and it was I'm going to post this I'm posting this in chat, but that it was a 4% minus 0.4 minus 0.04 saturation effect. So here I'm gonna turn it on and off. So I'm flickering it on the channel. So hopefully you can notice. Here, this is plus 10%. And so this I'm sure you will notice. That is very saturated. Anyways, this is here we go. We'll just completely crush the symbol, the thing. So there we go. Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Derek Melinda. Hey, 80085 is the funniest number. Yeah, I agree. I just realized that says boobs. All right, I gotta fix this. Hold on a sec, sorry. This is what everybody else's videos look like on the internet to me. No, just kidding. Violet is turning violet. You're violet. You're turning violet, Violet. So we were talking at Gary Con about who we should bring to the Wizards of the Coast. And I told Steven that he has to bring a Charlie Bucket, an Augustus Glump, a Violet Beauregard, a Mike TV, and a Veruca Salt. And he goes, what do you mean? I go, you're handing out golden tickets. I go, we're going to the factory, right? I said, so you got to make sure that you bring one of each of the kids as a representative. And I think he said, who am I? And I said, well, I'm clearly Charlie Bucket, right? I'm the little poor kid, who's pure and innocent and, only has the best intentions, right? And hopefully Wizards of the Coast will turn D&D over to me. I like to think that is the purpose of this. It's a plan to find the most worthy person amongst the five and bequeath them the D&D. Well, it's a little bit complicated because I'm like, well, kind of Steven is kind of my grandpa because, but he's also kind of Willy Wonka because he's the one who's actually handing out the golden tickets, but sort of not really because he's going as a guest too. It's a little bit confusing. No, I'm not Mike TV. Come on. We don't know. I don't be familiar. I think Charlie Bucket's father is dead in the novels. Look at this. Like we had two people message at the same time about everlasting gobstoppers. It's exactly right, Charlie, or exactly right, London. Charlie deciding at the end to give up the everlasting gobstopper is the moment that he realizes that he is the chosen one. The same way that when Luke throws away his lightsaber in Return of the Jedi, that is when he becomes a Jedi. And the Emperor realizes he is uncorruptible. And he goes from trying to convert him to killing him because he knows he can't win. That is so accurate. To be fair, the shady guy who wanted Charlie to steal the candy actually worked for Mr. Wonka. So, that got really, what was it called? What was it called? Not gloop. What was it called? Spew. Spew, right? Which was completely skipped in the movies, but what would D&D 6th edition look like under your control?
Dungeons and Dragons. Satan's game.
That's what it would look like. We would go back to Beelzebub. Blah. No, I don't know. So, Long's 4th edition remastered. Long story continuing, not short, because we're going to continue. While I was at GaryCon, I had it was a great experience. I actually have like I made a bunch of clips from GaryCon of cool stuff and you know, some talking stuff that I'm planning to try to edit into some sort of a video. You know, something that's more conversational, right? Than, you know, AKA, you know, 10 to 15 minutes. Not really like a specific topic. It's more of like a vlog, right? I don't know if you watch any YouTube creators who vlog, but it's kind of more of like, this is what's going on in my life right now. And as I'm sort of taking it all in, this is how I'm connecting it to my hobbies and my passions, which for me is D&D and RPGs. Obviously GaryCon had a very heavy D&D focus, you know? And so, you know, and in some ways it kind of reconnected me with that D&D focus. That being said, there were a lot of people there playing Shadowdark and a lot of people hyped up. And over the course of the weekend, while we did sell a lot of Eldamon and other Roll for Combat products, you know, we had a lot of people coming up to us who were really excited about Deathbringer and about the Shadowdark books. And so I got a chance to talk to a lot of these people. And, you know, during the course of shooting the shit with them, you know, I mentioned that are some of my ideas for some of the stuff that I would like to see. And one of them was this idea of a not a grim dark, but a noble dark Shadowdark game inspired by pirates. Ironically, before we went, somebody was like, hey, somebody is trying to do a pirate. Someone already did a pirate Shadowdark game. And I was like, oh, they were there. They were actually at GaryCon. But it was very much like Pirate Borg for Shadowdark, which, to be clear, I do not want to be like Pirate Borg for Shadowdark. I want to be something else. I want to be something heroic. I want to be something different. Now, granted, we'll see where we get through, you know, testing and feedback and all this other stuff. But one of the other things that I talked about, actually, I think if you watch it on YouTube, I don't know if it's up yet, but Arcane Library, Kelsey's company, did a couple of seminars, and I think they were going to put them up on YouTube. And they were asking questions, and there was some topics of conversation. And one of the things said, I was like, well, you know, I had played around with this idea of like a mega dungeon for Shadowdark. And the response from the audience and from the people who make Shadowdark, including Kelsey, was like, yes. In fact, basically, you know, what Kelsey said was that how can I say it? She's like, I made Shadowdark inspired by the games that I used to play, which were these long, dark dungeons. And she acknowledged that the modern day Shadowdark zeitgeist is to create, you know, dungeon on a postcard. 1-page dungeon, right? The 5-room dungeons. And a lot of what people, she seemed to almost be a little bit, I mean, I do not want to put words into her mouth, but she almost seemed to be a little bit lamentful that people weren't really running these like grindy, dark dungeon games. It was a lot of like one shots and two shots, and the dungeons were like 5 or 6 or 7 rooms, and you don't get that sense of like exploration and darkness that I think she was excited about. And so when I brought up this mention about, you know, a mega dungeon, Kelsey herself, now it's not like she came over to me and had a private sit down with me and was like, you should absolutely do this, but she was very much like, yes, like I think that is what's missing from Shadowdark, like as an ecosystem. So she was like very excited about this, and this is a long way of saying Kelsey clearly, I mean, everybody does really, but Kelsey clearly has better instincts and for business and for what people actually are interested in and want. And so my general sense is if Kelsey feels like it's a good idea, it probably is. Now, ironically, just as we were talking, as I was kind of like having this realization of like, oh, okay, wow, you know, maybe there is something, maybe I should revisit that. MCDM literally dropped their first video where they said, hey, we're making a new game. It's called Crows. It's all about dungeons. And I thought I was like, you know, overlapping here at points. So anyways, I was like, okay, well, maybe there is something to this then. And because I have the help of Smith now I understand that he's going to have to go get a job. He's not going to be available in the way that I wanted to. But, you know, hopefully with Shadowtide, as maybe something that we could do this year, you know, maybe that gives me a little bit more runway. This is getting back to why I was talking about that, right? Which is, you know, 25, you know, the extra 25,000, or I'm making that number up. But that might give me the extra runway I need to give me the time to actually try to develop some sort of mega dungeon and sell it. Now, speed to market, how does it look like? What should it look like? I mean, these are all questions. In fact, I was doing a poll with my patrons and, you know, about like, how should something like that, you know, best be served? Like Shadram here says, okay, I will only run dungeon adventures in Shadowdark. Planning to do some Lost City of Baracus at some point. Lost City of Baracus is fantastic. I've run the whole dungeon. I would call it a mega dungeon light. Yes, it's a mega dungeon, sort of. You know, it's really like 4 levels, maybe. You could kind of consider it to be 5 if you go all the way to the bottom with the Earthblood stuff. But it's mega dungeon light. I'll call that. It's big enough. It's big enough for most people. It's just not big enough for me. See, like this is a mega dungeon, you know. Chunk. Now, obviously, this is too big even for me. I don't think I would ever play this. It's a kilo, right? Mega dungeon, kilo, you know, right? It's a kilo dungeon. This is a mega dungeon. Good answer, obvious. What else do we got here? Okay. By comparison, Slumbering Sar Saga, The Lost City of Baracus. Okay, that's the difference. Okay, like let's just. I'm just saying, you know. Testy Trekkie says, so what you're saying, Derek, is you're a size queen. I'm just saying size matters. That's all. Or at least the girth does. If the length doesn't matter, the girth does. So anyways, there's this and there's this. Now, theoretically, I want something, you know, probably in between. Now, what's interesting, I actually own 2 copies of Lost City of Baracus, believe it or not. This is the original one. for third edition D&D for the D20 system, and this was a re-release that was done for Pathfinder First Edition. So this is both the same module. Somehow the original one is actually a little thicker. You would think that being that this was Pathfinder, they would have cut stuff out of this, but anyways. So here's what I wanted to show. So one of the mega dungeons that I consider to be truly a mega dungeon is what I call Rapanathuk, which I think is actually pronounced Rapanathuk, but I like Rapanathuk. But this is kind of my inspiration. So this is kind of like, again, this is about the logistics of it. So Rapanathuk, let me see if I actually have, because they eventually did do, okay, yeah, here it is. So this was the Pathfinder re-release. This was the third time they re-released Rapanathuk. This one was for, they did a release, I think, for Pathfinder, and I also think they did one for Swords and Wizardry. But you can see that this is obviously, thicker than this Lost City of Baracus, but it is not. It is not as thick as the Slumbering Star Saga. Now, to make it even more, you want to hear something that's even more depressing? This one here, okay, the Slumbering Star Saga, this is actually a prequel to this dungeon, believe it or not. So anyways, so they did that. This was the third time that they printed this. Now, when they printed this the third time, they put it all into one book, and they added added additional content. There's like, hey, we're doing it's like stretch goals before stretch goals existed, right? They're like, hey, we're going to add additional content to this because it's cool. Now, this was the second time that they printed Rapanathuk. This is Rapanathuk Reloaded. Now, this was still for third edition, but this was updated to 3.5. So they basically said, hey, we're gonna re-release the game. Now, this was one of the collector's edition. It was numbered. I'm official Killer DM number 0903. This was a boxed set. Okay. And this box set basically was a reprinting of these. These are the original R1, R2, and R3. These are the original third edition Rapanathuk modules. And they were released as follows. There was R1, the Dungeon of Graves, the upper levels. Rapanathuk 2, the middle levels. And then there is Rapanathuk 3, the lower levels. So the original Rapanathuk was released as a series of 3 modules. It was only until much later on when, I don't know, I guess people had a lot more money and RPGs got crazy, that they released it as this one big, huge, mega chunk. But, so basically, the question is to you, and by you, I mean you specifically, because if you're watching this, you're the type of person who would buy something I would make. But it's also you as an RPG customer. Which would you be more likely to buy? 3 separate modules or 1 gigantic tome? Now, keep in mind that these are a lot more portable. You also, by the way, got R1 before you got R2. You didn't have to literally wait until this massive tome got produced. Remember, this took years to produce. These came out, 6 to 12 months apart. So, you had time. Somebody said, I don't remember who it was, but they're like R3, also known as the part you will never get to. Let me read this for you. This is one of my favorite things, by the way, from this. This is what it says. So obviously, I mean, it goes without saying, but the final boss of Rapanathuk is Orcus. I mean, Orcus is the he's on the cover, but also he's like the motto, the mascot of Necromancer games from third edition era. But I do not think that is a spoiler. In fact, you start engaging with the cultists of Orcus and the Temple of Orcus is much earlier in the dungeon. So Let me read you. This is level 15, the Den of the Master. That is what it's called. Level 15, the Den of the Master. Okay. Difficulty level, all but impossible. Blah, blah, blah. All right. This level is the final page of adventure within the halls of Rapanathuk. In 22 years of DMing and playtesting in our home campaigns, it has never been reached, let alone conquered. This level should be treated as an epic finale of many years of play. It is neither forgiving nor is it remotely fair. Here, in this small pocket plane connected to both the prime material and the abyss, the party will encounter the Demon Prince himself with its full power and many servants. This level is incredibly dangerous, and no one may survive travel here without encountering Orcus himself. Remember, this is not a computer game. There are no cheat codes to kill Orcus. The PCs aren't even supposed to win. If they survive this far, they are powerful and foolhardy, yet Orcus should prove more than a match for them anyways. This is the end. Good luck. Now, later on, you actually get to the stat block for Orcus. And at the end, there is a section which says treasure. This is like, for the encounter, right? Treasure for the encounter of fighting Orcus. And it says, and I quote, if you are reading this, ask yourself, did I give this away too easily? If the answer is no, well then, it is time to reward the PCs. And so on and so forth and so on. And this massive treasure hoard and all this other crap. Anyways, I just love how it's like, did you, are you sure you didn't pull any punches? Now, obviously, this is like, epitomizes, right? Campaign as competition, right? This is not about telling a cool story and exploring your character's inner motivations. It's not about being like, let's experience and let's experience and storytell together. It is about like throwing down a gauntlet and saying, are you good enough? Can you beat these challenges, within the context of this game? So it is a very different, style of play. Anyways, Pumpkin says, I want the 3 separate modules. Jess, Technomancer, says there are a good reason why Paizo stuck with the monthly softcover adventure path volumes for decades, which is interesting, right? Because aren't they stopping doing that? Right? I think they're stopping now to do that. And Philip says, I think breaking it down in smaller chunks is the way to go. Now, I will be completely honest with you. It is much more practical for me to break it down into different chunks. Because that way I could release them, right, as different chunks, basically. Now, some people are like, why would I buy, the first part of a mega dungeon? And I guess the answer is, I don't know, I did. When you buy an adventure path, right, you buy the first part of the adventure, and you don't buy the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth part until later. And when Rapanathuk came out, it was, this. And you didn't necessarily know that this was ever going to, get published, right? Right. Nowadays, everything is just like in these one big thing. Now, to be clear, this book is really cool, but this book didn't get released first, right? They released the individual modules first. They got a lot of playtesting and feedback because before that, they had just run it for their own personal campaign. They developed it. They built it out. They added additional new areas. They added some overworld stuff in this module. They added a couple of town stuff. They added some additional bonus levels and sub-levels as part of their goal and expansion. This came last, right? It didn't come first, Now, Junderland says, ¿Por qué no los dos? Well, for all the reasons I just said. Now, London says separate PDF releases, a full print release. I mean, that is cool too, but it's tougher to make money on PDFs, because people will pay. I mean, nowadays, people, I think rightfully so. I'm not saying look, costs are costs. But people don't like paying $25 or $30 for a PDF. And you might say, yeah, but you make infinite profit. Trust me, you make way more money selling a $60 book than you do selling a $30 PDF. It may seem crazy, but you do. So, you would rather sell a $60 book, including the printing, including the shipping, including the tariff, than sell a 30, which I think a lot of people here would say, okay, 30 is starting to get pretty expensive, book or a PDF. Correct. Now, Zellwyvern, I'm with you. I am also a child of the 80s and 90s, and I love the thin module books. I think they feel more usable, more playable, all of that stuff to me, and I'm the same. I mean, to be completely honest with you, I love the idea, which, Steven, of course, Glicker says I'm crazy. I say I would love to do 2 different layouts, 2 completely different books, right? One book is the GM coffee table book that you read in your spare time that has a lot of lore and sidebars and discussion and all this other stuff, right? The other book is, is the workbook, right? It's maybe the paper quality isn't as high. It's designed to be written in and scribbled in. Maybe it's even bound with like a spiral bounding so that it can lay flat, or some sort of lay flat binding. Maybe the art is less prominent. It's more of a workbook to be used at the table. But again, this is the kind of stupid, crazy stuff that Derek always talks about, that people go like, smarter people, business people say, Derek, you're an idiot. You're crazy. Just give people whatever and they'll buy it. And I go, yeah, but I'm thinking about the experience of the GM at the table, Always. Yeah. Well, we're back, this is like my first Friday home in literally a month. I'm not even kidding. I've been on the road every Friday for the last month. I've been on the road. So just confirming about Paizo says, yeah, they are pivoting to hardcover adventure paths. Paizo's business, customers, distribution network, and the industry have all changed. Have Steven dug around on why they changed? I don't know. I have not heard anything, Jess. I'm not sure. That is true. Yeah. I mean, I obviously I would want to talk with publishers and figure out how their stuff, but right. So absolutely, Philip. I mean, but again, the only thing I will say is, would you rather get the full dungeon in 3 years, or would you rather get the first part of the dungeon today? Is what it really comes down to. And by today, I mean, see, there you go. Lug says, I just can't bring myself to pay for PDFs. It's just not worth it. And I think a lot of people feel that way. I know that, Vin, when we're on stream, he'll rant and rave about, what was it? Was it Cosmere? I think the Cosmere PDFs for like $40. And we were all like, bleh, and again, we respect it. I understand a lot of work goes into it, even if it is a PDF, but it feels bad in some ways to pay that much money and not have a physical thing. But it's the world that we're living in, Right, exactly. People have this mistaken belief that the digital, where in fact, the printing cost is one of the cheapest parts of making the book, right? All of the work that goes into making it is far more. All the art that goes into it is far more, right? Well, that's the other thing too, GM. If I'm going to make a physical book, my God, is it going to be beautiful and wonderful. And, I'm going to pay out the ass. I love, the Free League books, the One Ring books. I think that they are so gorgeous, but I've been told they're very expensive to make, between the materials on the cover, the type of paper, the treatment, the whole thing, Just saying, oh my God, do not make 2 different books. See, but that's what I would want to have. See, where Shadram says, oh yes, do that. I want to read the fancy book and play with the lighter book with my own notes. Exactly. See, Unfortunate Pumpkin says, yes, give me a book for use and a book just to read. Right? We want a book for the streets and a book for the bed, right? That's what we want. We want a book for the streets and a book for the bed. Kojo, that is very true. People do not know how businesses work in general. Now, Steven says he knows why. It's too expensive to make soft covers, as nobody wants to carry them anymore. So there you go. Lion's Head. Hey, what's up, Lionhead? Lionhead says, maybe because I'm a gamer, but this doesn't bother me at all. So. Lug says, please, for the love of God, wait until the book is actually done and battle tested before you release it to print. I can't stand erratas and updates. Paizo makes their physical books a fool's purchase. I'm with you, Lugs. I definitely think that there is a lot of advantage to be gained by extensively playtesting a digital version of your game first to at least fix most of the obvious mistakes, before we have that. So I do think that is a nice advantage. The way that Roll for Combat does their stuff, I think is really cool. This is why you sell your TTRPG as a video game. People buy those all the time, even though it's not a physical copy, right? You're like, hey, get a video game and a TTRPG for free. You say the burden of 1,600 pounds of books on your wall would be such a hassle. Well, let's just say this goes all the way over to that wall. It goes all the way over to this wall. It goes all the way to the ceiling, and it goes all the way to the floor. And that's not even my whole RPG collection. I also hate PDFs, as is well known on this channel. I find them to be very difficult to use, to reference. I don't like reading them. Most books aren't designed to be used with a PDF. I don't know if you've noticed this, but if you try to look at a book in a PDF, you can't see the whole page at once unless you're zoomed out. But I'm saying, like, if you zoomed in, you can't see the whole page. So it's like, well, what is it? I'm either zoomed out and I can't read it, or I can't see the whole page. They're terrible. Now, you could design things to actually fit, people's monitors or laptops, but nobody wants to do that. I suppose the only thing they really do fit are tablets if they're in a portrait mode. But even then, I feel like tablets are kind of on the way out and people don't use those much anymore. Anyways, I don't like PDFs. And I just don't like that they're not really designed for that. Rotate your monitor 90 degrees. There you go. I'll just rotate my entire setup every time I want to look at a PDF. Now, you mentioned the Control F in search. Can I be honest with you? I've never found that to be particularly interesting. Now, you mentioned the 2-page view mode. That is something that I do have a little bit. That is, generally speaking, I think a little bit more enjoyable. But unfortunately, if I zoom in on the one, I basically lose the other one. But I do sometimes I do the 2-page view mode, especially to see the layout, I've read more RPG books on my phone. Oof, horrible. So there's a lot of discussion points to be made here, Shadram, and most of them have to do with me being horrible, and having nothing in common with the average gamer, which is, I don't want you to shortcut that stuff. I think part of the fun, part of the allure of a mega dungeon for me is the friction of the interface. And I know there's this obsession with making like every game smooth as butter and having like an app to run everything, but it's like, it sounds strange, but I almost don't want that. I know it's weird, but I almost don't want that. Again, it's a topic for another conversation. And again, I'm wrong here. I understand that. So I was going to talk about the Control F. Steam driven, by the way, that's exactly what happens to me. Whenever I do a search term for a book, I get a million results and it doesn't help me at all. So I'm the same way. Derek, you get to keep one of your bookshelf cubes as it is currently divided. The rest get Thanos snapped. Which one are you keeping? Now, Lugs, by saying it gets Thanos snapped, are you meaning that they're all gone, or that there's a 50-50 chance that it's gone and I only get to keep one cube safe from the 50-50 chance? Or do you mean I only get to keep one cube and everything else gets annihilated? So you got to be very clear here. Okay, all gone. Great question. Well, luckily for you, all of my One Ring books are currently on my bedside table. So, haha, they're immune to that. I mean, it's kind of hard not to go with my first edition and original BX stuff. I'd hate to lose my fourth edition stuff. I could lose the fifth edition stuff and not care. I mean, just for sentimentality, I would keep this one. And at the end of the day, this right here, this is all you need. This is all you need to play D&D. Apparently for 40 plus years. See, look at this, Jess. Whenever I release my secret project I've been laying out in A5 Landscape. Ooh, there you go. I appreciate it. I think A5 Landscape is chef's kiss. You know who likes to lay out a lot of PDFs in Landscape? John Harper. Most of his independent games that he makes for free are done in Landscape. Oh, it is raining really hard. I was like, what is that sound? Is the industry moving towards VTT RPGs? I think so. Yeah. There is something magical to me about sitting down with a physical book, and I absolutely love it. You know, I can't believe it. But yes, I would love to do that. In fact, I don't know if I have it here. Oh, I do. So this is a mega dungeon. This one is actually for Axe. So this is a mega dungeon that obviously is printed. It's not great paper, and the print and the binding isn't really particularly great. It's kind of cheaply made, if we're being honest with ourselves. But this 400-page tome. However, when I was running this, I made a bunch of these. I used. I'm not gonna lie. I used my office at the time. I mean, this was years ago when I worked at Progressive. I used my office's printing center to make these spiral bound books, these little mini books. And so this is like the map book. I had a book for level 1. I had a book for level 2. And so the thing is like I didn't need to bring this whole thing, right? I could just grab my little, thing here for level 1. But this book had all the maps laid out. So, if I needed to know what level, this is level 1. This is, level 1 of the dungeon. But it's on paper, it's printer paper. I can write on it. If the players, if the players destroy a wall or something, I can, write on it with a pen. I can, do whatever. And so I find this to be incredibly cool. I mean, this is what I do all the time. I have a bunch of these over here. Oh yeah. So here's the illustration book from that mega dungeon. So I would just have this as one of my little books that I would bring with me. And again, very small, very easy, very slim, much easier than bringing this gigantic honking thing. And then I would print these out, spiral bound them. And actually you can see these ones actually ended up getting, what I ended up doing is 3-hole punching these. And then I would store all of these little separate sub books. I would store them in a big binder. And that way, if I needed to, I could just bring the whole binder, and then I could pop open the rings and grab the little micro books that I needed. But then if I needed to, because it could fold over, so I could just go, okay, this is what you see. This is this is what you see in that room. So again, these are real. These are real dungeons that I ran. This is long before I ever had a YouTube channel, right? So this is the type of stuff that I did as a GM to make my life easier. And obviously, I was willing to go that extra mile because I wanted to, have these easy, convenient things that I could edit, update, change, make notes in, not feel bad about, and not just have to, Shrek through these because I also know that, when this thing hits my table, this binding is gone. I mean, again, you guys have seen my Pathfinder first edition book. I don't even know if it's in here. The whole cover it's all just duct tape. It's just gray duct tape. You can't even see that it says Pathfinder core rulebook because it's just all duct tape. Because I'll have this thing and it'll be this. It'll get soda spilled on it, pizza stains. It's for use. This is not a work of art to me. This is a tool. It's a hammer. It's a hand plane. It's got a fucking, it's going to be in the trenches with me. So, anyways, just going off on a rant here. Snookums, Derek, why can't people print those themselves from the PDF? Why does it need to be sold as a separate pre-printed book? Well, two things, Commander Snookums. Number one, most people aren't going to go get those things printed. That's just full stop. Number two, because what I am suggesting is that these things could and should be laid out, literally laid out differently than this. Like this book, it doesn't, but like this book, if I was making this book, I would want to include like sidebars that like talk to the GM and say, hey, make sure you do this when you're running this faction. Keep in mind, this level has this really weird effect, and here's why I put that in here. So you understand my motivation so that you can play it properly or use it properly to create the kind of experience that I was trying to go for, right? Like sidebars, lots of really pretty layout. I'm not talking about like Morkborg levels of layout. I'm talking about like, just fun, pretty art, that flows across the page. I'm suggesting that this thing is lean, mean. This is designed for, this is for the QB in the huddle. It doesn't have all of the accoutrements. It's just the bare minimum that you need at the table, right? Because as a GM, when I'm sitting there at the table, I don't want to read the backstory and lore of the bleak Cabal faction and how 500 years ago they came to Dwimmermount through a portal and blah, 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 blah. Like, okay, cool. That is good information. And it's the fun stuff that as a GM, I want to read. And especially on my off time, right? That's how I do prep for a mega dungeon. I just immerse myself in the dungeon so that me and the dungeon become one. And so eventually I get to the point where I don't have to reference this book because I've read through it enough and I've sort of integrated the dungeon into my mind, into my soul, and I can just respond with the appropriate answer because I've sort of done that. But I don't need that. In this, I need stat blocks, maps, trap effects, basic layouts. Like I just need that type of stuff. So that's why I said it's not just about printing it out as a separate PDF. It's literally a different style of layout, right? I mean, even as a GM, I can tell you behind my GM screen, I would much rather something lay flat as a landscape than a portrait. Because a lot of times when you try to put something in as a portrait, and then you double spread it, it just takes up too much real estate behind your GM screen, especially nowadays that people are using those shorter GM screens, which, by the way, I really prefer the sort of landscape GM screens. But I'll tell you, if you have a landscape GM screen and that middle panel is 8.5 by 11 landscape, it's really nice to take something like this, have it be laid out in a landscape format, and then lay it flat right in front of your screen, because then it takes up exactly that much real estate. So like, those are the type of things that I'm like, I know people are like, that's stupid. And I'm like, maybe, but as someone who's been playing these games for 35 years, like that's the type of stuff that matters to me. Yeah. No, these would be different. I think you could get it done there. God knows what it costs you these days, Commander Snookums. I mean, to be honest with you, most people I know don't even own a printer. So, correct. The issue with 2 books is doing 2 separate layout runs. Yes, 100%. Correct. How long does the second layout ask? Asking for a friend. Yes. There you go. I've gone completely batty. So leave Derek alone. He's spitting fire. Magic says sidebars like that would be a lifesaver. Some adventures are laid out as if they want to surprise the GM sometimes. Completely agree. And I think that is absolutely fucking horrible. Because, and you know what though, Magic of Ashura? You're right. Because I think that a lot of people, well, this is going off the whole thing. Number one, I think a lot of people who write adventures are, they secretly want to be authors, right? They're failed authors, they're wannabe authors, and so they're using this as an excuse to sort of be an author, and as you say, surprise the GM. Number two, I think that a lot of publishers recognize that a lot of GMs buy these adventures and never run them, right? It's like, okay, years ago, I remember going to a Magic the Gathering tournament, I think in Louisville, where we just were for Gamma. And at that time, casinos were illegal in Kentucky, but riverboat gambling was allowed because technically they weren't in Kentucky. They were on a riverboat, which was in the river, and there were different laws. So anyways, you could have casinos on a riverboat, but you couldn't have a casino on land. So the boat was the casino. But when you got to the boat never moved. It was technically a boat. Legally, it was a boat. But it was incapable of moving as a boat. It was essentially, stuck on land. But I asked, and it still had to have a chief engineer, even though it didn't have an engine. And they still had to have a pilot and a captain, even though the boat was not capable of moving, because it was like a legal technicality that for it to be a boat, it had to have an engineer, and it had to have it had to have a captain, and it had to have a pilot. And so I think that some publishers recognize that they are selling adventures to people who they know are only going to read it, and they are never going to run it. And so there's no reason to make the book easy to run, because the chances are very good that the GM is never going to run the adventure. Instead, the GM is going to read it. And so they're optimizing for the GM's experience of reading the book rather than optimizing for actually running the adventure. And I think a lot of people do that. Listen, we don't deal in trivialities like tricky and difficult. Laying out anything is going to be a Herculean task for me, so we might as well do it twice, right? What's up, Nicholas? Good to see you, buddy. Yeah, I guess it is kind of like selling GM prep as a product. It's more of like, again, a book for the a book for the streets and a book for the a book for the streets and a book for the sheets, right? One is the book that you as a GM sit down with and you flip through in your spare time or before you go to bed. You're learning the dungeon, you're reading the sidebars, you're getting engrossed in the factions and the lore. The other is the thing that you use at the table. Yes, that is actually true. It's truly wild how much the analog world is all default to portrait versus almost nobody works on portrait monitors. Right. But yes, I do think more things should be published landscape. Full stop. Let's see here. Good night, London. I'll probably drop off here soon. Famous last words. How dare you? I have 30 complete Pathfinder APs and I have run at least 3 of them. Well, they get you there with the subscription model, right? Hey, thank you, Man from Nan. Good to see you. There you go. It was the same in Louisiana, according to Pumpkin. Land-based casinos were illegal, and we had riverboats. I worked on a riverboat that couldn't move, and we had a captain. Right. I forgot that Pumpkin used to work at a casino. Oh, absolutely. The buy it to read it crowd is a legit demographic. I kid you not. I remember years ago at Origins, maybe like 3-4 years, not like years ago, like back in the annals of time, but like 3-4 years ago, you know, when Critical Role and the modern RPG movement was becoming a thing. Smith and I were at Origins, and we saw a booth that was selling audio tapes of 5e adventures. But they weren't actual plays. They were like recordings of the game as if it was of the adventure module. It was like one for each adventure module, but it was like reading it as if that adventure module was a story. Does that make sense? And I remember him and I basically being like, this is the saddest thing that we've ever seen in our entire life. So it wasn't like an actual play. It was like them taking the adventure module and turning it into an audiobook, kind of. Not like reading the actual adventure, but like turning it into like as if it's like as if you actually played it and then you turned that into a story that, you know, removed all like the table talk and the game talk and stuff like that. It was bizarre. So right. Magic Visura. Yes. I didn't understand it when he meant it at first, but then when he described it, it made a lot more sense to me. Yeah, that's true. Oh, I have a different reason. I mean, the number of RPGs I've bought over the last several years is exponentially more than I ever bought in the past. I always bought a lot of RPGs. Obviously, you can see that. But I buy a lot more RPGs now than I ever did before because I have a channel, you know, so that is something there. Yes, it's so you can imagine what your game might have been like if you pretended like you actually played it. That is correct. Yes, it was basically like the Vox Machina show. Actually, yes, that's exactly what it was. Before Vox Machina was, they predicted the rise of Vox Machina. But you know, because Vox Machina, the show, right, is taking their adventure, which was played as a D&D campaign, albeit, you know, kind of a unique set of D&D campaigns. But it was like doing that and then turning it into an audiobook. But again, it's not like just listening to the book, right? That's still on the docket, by the way, right? Derek reads books, like 12-hour ASMR 12-hour ASMR playlists where I just like just read one of these books like cover to cover, you know, no commentary, you know, I just read it, you know. I think we started to do that as a joke during the Super Bowl stream. I think we started reading AD&D Second Edition Player's Handbook during the Super Bowl stream, and people were like, "This is awesome! You should do this for real." But I think I was even then still like stopping and giving commentary. But I'm just talking about just like me reading it, you know, because a lot of people go, "Derek, I listened to you to fall asleep," and I'm like, "Okay, I will just read you. I will read you the AD&D Player's Handbook." Each and every character has 6 principal characteristics. The character's ability scores. These abilities are, in order, strength, intelligence, wisdom, dexterity, constitution, and charisma. See also Appendix 1, psionic ability. The range of these abilities is between 3 and 18. The premise of this game is that each player character is above average, at least in some respects, and has superior potential. Like, that's like the idea. Shadran says that is not the right order. Well, yes, it is. Hey!
Anonymous tipped $10. We all have dungeons in our minds. Dungeons unexplored, unending. Each of us gets most in the dungeon, every night. Where did you fall to, and what did you discover? Just paraphrasing Ursula K. Le Guin, keep the good work.
Thank you so much. By the way, one of my true loves, I have many reasons I love dungeons. One of the reasons I love dungeons is because of book 2 of the Earthsea cycle, The Tombs of Atuan, which I think is like one of the coolest dungeons of all time. And so I'm right there with you with Ursula K. Le Guin. I love it. And I do love dungeons. Thank you for that tip, Anonymous. I don't know if somebody wants to claim that, but I appreciate it. Lug says, I should read Burning Wheel. Oh, there you go. Jess says, one year I got an audiobook at PaizoCon of someone basically reading through Curse of the Crimson Throne. So I guess that's a thing that has been around. Pumpkin says, I would listen to someone read all of a TTRPG book. Junderland says that they would prefer that and absorb the information better that way. Shadram, the original order of ability scores was Strength, Int, Dex, Wisdom, Con, Charisma. Con and Charisma came last because they were not the prime attributes of the 4 main classes, whereas Strength, Intelligence, Dex, and Wisdom were the primary attributes for the Fighter and the Fighter subclasses, the Thief and the Thief subclasses, the Wizard and the Magic User and the Magic User subclasses, and the Cleric and the Cleric subclasses. And in the original character sheets, up until the probably the late 90s, listed them in that order. Con and Charisma came last because Con and Charisma were kind of like secondary ability scores in that way. Philip Manley, I want to say Philip Manley is asking about Twilight Sword. I want to say somebody paid for a Twilight Sword first look, I think. I'm not exactly sure. I'm looking on my Discord. They may have sent me a text. Yeah, I don't know. If somebody did, then yes. Well, Derek, listen, how people choose to use what I produce is up to them. I would prefer, I listen to you to fall asleep. I would prefer that to, I put you on when I make love to my wife. Actually, maybe I wouldn't. Maybe I would have preferred the other way. I don't know. Pumpkin says, I loved reading Burning Wheel. The game blew my mind, and I couldn't believe I'd never read it. I fell in love with Crane instantly. Now, have you read Codex? Because now this is Burning Wheel Deluxe. Yeah, I love Earthsea. Can I stream me reading Chubos like that? That might be tough. That might be tough for me to do. All right, we got to read Codex eventually. Let's see who's winning. It is tied. 33 votes Daggerheart, 33 votes Legend in the Mist. I'm guaranteeing you people are voting just to keep it tied. Sorry, I'm reading through the player's handbook now. You still don't know how Blaze in the Dark lost. Well, Zetrum, at this point, Blaze in the Dark is such an institution that it's almost taken for granted. It also won, I think like maybe 2 of our years. So, it had its time in the, it had its time in the sun, It's good, let the new kids have a chance. Keith, thank you for stopping by. Appreciate it. Fermi says, let's go Dagger hype. Yeah. I got to figure out what we're doing for that. In May, right? It's the 1-year anniversary of Daggerheart. It still hasn't even been out for a year yet. And I know that Darrington Press is going to be doing a bunch of stuff for the 1-year anniversary. Plus, they're getting, built up to the, the release of Hope and Fear, which I think is going to get released at Gen Con. So basically like a month later and change. I guess two years. And I really do want to support the game, but man, I talked about this on a previous stream, but I had a conversation with Spencer Stark at Gamma about this, and I just don't know. I just don't know how to do it. I just feel like the Daggerheart community is in a different place than me. I am definitely not simulationist heavy, like that is not where I'm at. Like that's just not my cup of tea. I don't think it's really ever been my cup of tea. Like I enjoy I enjoy Traveler to a certain extent, but I don't really like the super hyper simulationist games for sure. You're still salty that Dragonbane beat for Dragonbane has always been way more popular for Forbidden Lands, and I think Forbidden Lands is way better. That's just me. But so I'm right there with you. Somebody asked me, do I like Blade 68? No, because I don't like modern games. I mean, I'll probably take a look at it and back it just because I want to see if they do anything different with the rules, but I don't really like games set any time after, I don't know, the medieval ages. Like, I like fantasy and I like sci-fi. I guess the only modern games I enjoy are like superheroes, which is fantastic enough. Third edition is weird, though, Philip. I consider third edition to be heavy simulationist, but also heavy game. It's not just heavy simulation. Like third edition still has concepts like trying to make a good game, Well, no, because Age of Sail is like all pirates, and I don't like I'm not like a huge fan of like not fantasy pirates. Oh, Nick, thank you, Nicholas, by the way, for that tip.
And Androids tipped $10.
Thanks, Sim
Games for life.
There you go, Sim Games for life. Like, I'm not against sim. You know what? I appreciate a sim game, just not as I think as a role playing game. Like, I think playing a sim game as a computer game could be very lovely. Doing it as a board game can be a lot of fun. Doing it as a war game can even be a lot of fun. I just don't really care about doing it as a role-playing game. And when I say medieval, I really just mean magic. I like magic. I like fantasy. I like stuff that can't exist. So like superheroes might be set in modern times, but they're superheroes. They're flying, they're moving faster than light, they're shooting laser beams out of their eyes. So that at least interests me. I don't like playing I have no interest in playing because even like Call of Cthulhu, yeah, like there's alien horrors, but if I'm not mistaken, most of the time your characters are just ordinary people. I don't like that. That's one of the reasons I don't like Call of Cthulhu. As cool as I think the game is, like Outgunned doesn't really interest me because ultimately your character is just a pulp action flyboy, or you're a modern 80s action movie star. You're not actually. It's something that can't happen. That's just boring to me, Yeah, I don't play human the normal way. For example, Monster Hearts, Jess. You're a werewolf. You're a witch. You're clearly supernatural. That's cool to me. Thank you, Zatram.
$10. I'm late, but not too late.
Well, I did say like 20 minutes ago that I was going to end up. So, you came in just at the right time, Zetram, keeping me going. I don't like Cyberpunk, but I can't tell you why I don't like Cyberpunk. I tried. I tried. I just didn't. I read Neuromancer. It never grabbed me. I think you know what it is? We talked about the alignment diagram, right? Of like grim dark. And then I said, I like noble bright, grim dark, noble bright, noble dark. And then Cyberpunk Cyberpunk isn't grim dark. Cyberpunk is grim bright, right? Like Cyberpunk is like these really, you know what it comes down to? I think I don't like cynical characters. So I don't really like Grimdark, and I don't really like Grim Bright. Like, I could do a little bit of Grimdark, like with certain elements of like Warhammer, and it's a little bit, maybe a little bit more fun. But like ultimately, I think being a cynical edgelord nihilist is just not something I want from my protagonist, right? I'd rather my characters be heroic rather than my characters be, anti-heroes, and I think that's what it comes down to, I don't like, Grimdark is better when it's campy. I will agree with that, W4. Like Shazbot says, right? You have orcs and Warhammer kind of makes fun of the Grimdark. Like it's almost doing it over the top, to be almost kind of like a pun, a combination lollipop. But I think what it really comes down to is I grew up with, Tolkien and Le Guin and Dragonlance, and I grew up, I don't want to be a cynical nihilist, I want to be someone who hopes, who dares to hope, who believes, right? That a person can make a difference. I like that, case full stop. I have always hated Wolverine, and I've always loved Cyclops, which obviously is like very different from the popular opinion, right? People fucking lose their mind over Wolverine. And while Wolverine, is heroic in his own way, I've always thought the edgy anti-hero, he's so too cool for school. I've never been interested in that type of character. I also love Star Trek, and I love, original Star Wars, right? Who is Luke Skywalker but this hope incarnate? Right down again to my favorite part in the entire, well, I would say trilogy, but now it's 9 movies, which is where Luke Skywalker throws away his lightsaber. So I hate Canada. Right. Apparently Wolverine is the official motto of Canada. Right. Smokes cigars, rides motorcycles, he steals your girl, To be fair, X-Men 97 did do a lot for Cyclops was always kind of badass. Now, the cartoon show, the original X-Men cartoon show, right, they made Cyclops look like a punk bitch compared to Wolverine. Wolverine was a cool guy, right? And but what really killed Cyclops, right, was the X-Men movies and James Marsden, right? To the point where in X3 they literally kill him off screen. And all they ever show Cyclops doing in all of these films, even the new films, is like losing control, and like his blast is doing more harm than good. So, yeah. I don't know that I have a thought on Mounties, but I will say I love beavers. I think beavers are really cool, and I think they're really awesome. Like I grew up reading comics, during the 90s, but my favorite, it's funny, I was going to say new, but at this point it's not new. My favorite run of the X-Men comics, which I collected for probably about, I know I didn't collect all of it. Let me see how long it was. It was for 8 years and 100 main issues. Okay. From 2001 to 2008 was the Ultimate X-Men series. So in the early 2000s, Marvel did a reboot of all of their core universes and created the Ultimate Universe. And I like some of them. I didn't like all of them, but I really love the Ultimate X-Men. I think I only got through maybe about 70 of them. I don't think I ever collected the final 30 issues. But if you're looking for an incredible story, I recommend X-Men, Ultimate X-Men. It is so good, and it's so modern, and it's so great. And Cyclops, I mean, Wolverine's, also still Wolverine, but Cyclops is really cool in that as well. So original Ultimate X-Men, Nick Fury is black, but he's not based on Sam Jackson. They eventually did change the character to look like Sam Jackson. I don't know where my Ultimate. You know what? I think they're in storage. I don't think I have my comic books here, but otherwise I would pull them out. But yeah, so maybe. I mean, look, Cyclops, he's a leader. He follows the rules. He cares about his team. He doesn't just do whatever he wants. He's the good guy. That just became very unpopular, and it's the same way that like people love playing the tiefling that, there's all those comics that make the joke about, the edgelord tiefling warlock who is cloaked in shadow in the corner and doesn't make friends with anybody. I don't know. At some point it became popular to be the bad boy, and to shit on that, but yeah. Anyways, Ultimate X-Men, incredible series. It was the last, I tried to get into the New 52. When year did that come out? So that came out in 2011, which was a DC reboot of basically all of their main character lines. And I tried to get into the New 52, and I just couldn't. I hate Deadpool. Deadpool is my absolute least favorite comic book character of all time. I absolutely hate him. I like nothing about him. But I didn't really collect the New 52 for that long. I could, because I used to collect Superman when I was a kid and through like the 90s and stuff like that. But it was okay. But that was, I think, the last comic books I collected. It was like the Ultimate series and then the New 52, and then I pretty much stopped. Yes, the new movie, the third one, Deadpool and Wolverine, I enjoyed it for the fan service, for bringing back Wesley Snipes as Blade and for bringing back Jennifer Garner as Elektra and, the girl from, whatever her name is, Daphne Keane from the Logan movie. Like that was good. And then like, it's Captain America. Nope. Psych. It's Johnny Storm. Like that was legitimately funny to me. But like Deadpool being Deadpool, like loving like the ugly dog and like killing the Ryan Reynolds dog, like it did nothing for me, Also, at no point, at any point during the thing, like I remember like there was all this big up hype, like, like even in the movie, they're like, here we go, like Wolverine is going to fight Deadpool. And I'm like, that's pointless. They're both essentially immortal and invincible. So, and they're definitely not with the type of power that they're wielding, which is knives and guns. Like, what are we doing here? But anyways, Ultimate, the Ultimates, which was basically their version of the Avengers. I love the Ultimates. I like Ultimate Fantastic Four. I like Ultimate X-Men. Well, he can't, right? I mean, his skeleton is made out of adamantium, or it's laced with adamantium. Yes. Yeah, I have no desire for any modern comment as well. So I don't really care about Invincible or the Free League game, which is coming out either. So there's that. But again, I kind of got off the comics thing. I mean, I like the MCU. It was cool. It was good. But obviously it went, it went bad, I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. Also, I don't know if adamantium can slice through adamantium. Also, it's not adamantine. Adamantine is from D&D. Adamantium is from Marvel. Get it right. Yeah, so new stuff. No, I mean, I'm sure it's cool. I just, literally all I know about Invincible is when like it was viral from the cartoon of the guy killing the guys, all his teammates. And I immediately was like, I'm out. I also don't like gore, by the way. That's another thing I don't like. I don't like gore. It's one of the reasons I don't like horror movies, slasher films. I don't like gore. And I don't like shock jocks. I don't like shock factor, ick factor, gross out factor. I don't like gross out humor. I don't even like cringe humor. So I think it's it's not for me. Yeah. Again, I never read the comic books, but from just what I saw from the cartoon, I hate everything about the boys. Again, I've never watched an episode, but I've seen clips, on YouTube, viral clips and stuff like that. No interest, to say nothing of the fact that like this just like completely, just like hopeless, cynical view of superpowers. And it does nothing for me, What can I say? Like I said, I like a certain, yeah, exactly. I at least, Derek knows what he actually dislikes. Yes, right. It is a very cynical take on the superhero genre, right? Which I am not about, No, I get that there's a more complex message there, and I'm not saying that isn't something that I think is at least interesting. But it doesn't mean that the message, I might approve of the message. I just don't like having to hear it. You know what I mean? Like it's just not it's not a way that I want to hear it, But yeah, just not my thing. I don't like irreverent. I don't like subversion of expectations just for the fact of subverting expectations. Again, I don't like weird, gross out humor and stuff like that. Now, The Watchmen is obviously very cynical in a way, but I find that to be a much better, more, I'll say, cerebral way of covering that. For starters, The Watchmen is a limited series. I mean, it starts and it finishes. So I have read The Watchmen. I thought the movie was good. I thought it was well done. And I thought it was really well written. And yes, it had elements of that, but there's a classiness there that I think stands out. I think The Watchmen is a more mature way of telling that story. Yeah. So again, to each their own, that I did not see because that was during the era where I got rid of my television. So I didn't have television during that era, but, right. Like for example, in the Watchmen movie, I much preferred that Ozymandias used the power of Dr. Manhattan to basically create nuclear bombs to blow up the cities rather than summoning extra dimensional squids. Like I always thought the extra dimensional squid part was weird and stupid. I thought it was really dumb. I much preferred that part, for example, in the movie over the book. I was like, oh yeah, that was way better. Generally speaking, media just disappoints me, which is why I love TTRPGs so much because, look, the stories we're making are bad, but we're not professional actors and we're not being paid to do this. And there's not millions of dollars and technically hundreds of people who are supposed to be making sure that this is good. When I see something that's bad and it gets made, I just go, how did this get made? I can confirm, Jess, that you do have the aesthetic sensibilities of a teenage boy edgelord. I will confirm that 100%. But why not male models? Even I am not immune to a Zoolander reference. What is it? A building for ants? A house for ants? There is a podcast called How Did This Get Made? Again, haven't seen any of these shows. I have seen clips of Chernobyl, and it looked great. And I love the actors look amazing as well. So that's true. All Derek's must love. I thought you said dicks for some other reason. Must love Zoolander by default. Well, Chernobyl's interesting to me just because that's one of those things that years ago I had like taken an interest in and just like learned all about like RBMK reactors and how the disaster occurred and all that other stuff. I think it was when like the Fukushima disaster happened. Yeah. Now, I'm not going to lie. Okay? I'm not going to lie to you. I've never seen True Detective. However, I have seen one scene in that I have seen one scene in that show, and it's one of the greatest things I've ever seen in my entire life. So I'll just say that. I'll leave it at that. So I've never watched True Detective, but I've definitely watched that one scene, and it was probably one of the most wonderfully shot scenes I've ever seen in my entire life. Let's see here. Next Generation is my favorite Star Trek series. Now, to be clear, I haven't seen anything else after Enterprise. So I have not seen, I don't know, all those other crap ones that I don't care about. But, the original series, it's fine. I appreciate the moral storytelling. Like it's really, especially for the time, that it was there. But inside, inside what I consider to be the core thing, Deep Space Nine, I have really come to appreciate it. It's not, I like the episodic nature of Next Generation. But Deep Space Nine is really about you're really telling these longer term stories, especially once the Dominion War happens. That being said, Deep Space Nine is a plus television. As a kid, I didn't like it as much. As an adult, I also agree that I've come to enjoy Deep Space Nine. I don't know if I want to say more because it is a different type of storytelling. I dare I say, it is more realistic. It is more shades of gray. It is more. But what I like about Next Generation is I enjoy that it's aspirational, right? I enjoy that it's like utopian porn, that we have characters who act like adults and have reasonable conversations and make moral judgments, and come to moral decisions. And, Deep Space Nine kind of takes a more fatalistic, dare I say, cynical view of things. And I appreciate that Next Generation tackles these stories from that perspective. So Next Generation is my favorite. But Deep Space Nine, very close second. Voyager, it's okay. There's some episodes, but that are pretty good. But for the most part, I think it's passable. The secondary cast never grabbed me the way that, compare a Garrick or a Quark to fucking Neelix. It's like not even close. Like it's just not even in the same universe. Enterprise was shit, but whatever, it didn't have that thing. And I didn't watch anything else after that, What about Stargate? So, RIP Tuvix. What about Stargate? So I am very unusual in that my preferred Stargate is Stargate Atlantis. SG-1 is, Atlantis can be at times too, but SG-1 is too, jokey sometimes, especially Richard Dean Anderson, right? Is way too just like they're making a joke out of it. There are some SG-1 episodes that are obviously hilarious, but you know, and like Daniel Jackson becomes like invincible or like immortal like 5 times or something like that. Like he ascends and then he unascends and then he reascends and then he unascends. I thought Atlantis, I liked the characters better. Like I like Rodney McKay better than I like Daniel Jackson. You know, I like Shepard more than O'Neill. So crazy takes, maybe. Oh, I like Ronan better than I like Teal'c. I didn't really like Teal'c. So Atlantis is great. Now, second hot take, I thought Universe was fascinating. I thought Universe was great. I know a lot of people hated it. They said it was like, you know, a soap opera in space. But I thought like the tension with Rush and I don't remember the commander's name. But geez, what was his name? Anyways, the commander guy, the guy with the short, kind of curly, dark hair. I thought the tension there was great. I love that they were stranded. It didn't really feel like a Stargate show, but it was interesting, and I thought it was really cool. And it of course, it left us on a cliffhanger that we'll never get to resolve. So I will admit that the Eli character was annoying, and I didn't really like him that much. I mean, Commander Young, thank you. Good memory. But yeah, I thought Rush was great. I loved that he was like this. He was almost like he was the scientist, but in a way he was like the priest. You know, like he was this disciple of destiny. That's the name of the ship they're on in Stargate Universe, by the way. And I thought that was really, really clever. And they started to hint at this idea about finding out the structure of the cosmic microwave background radiation. I thought it was really fascinating. I was really excited to see where they were going to go. And yeah, it didn't. It also, I think you said it learned so many good lessons. I also think a lot of people were trying to be very BSG like as well. So I agree with that. Have I ever watched Farscape or Lex? Yes. I've seen every single episode of Farscape at least twice. Lex, I've seen a handful of episodes. I didn't enjoy it as much. Farscape, though, absolutely love it. It's so bizarre and twisted, and I love it. And they actually make the alien characters feel alien, which I really appreciate. Yeah, Farscape is, yeah. It's such a, that was my attempt to do the intro. It's so good. And again, the characters in that show are so good. And I mean, like the puppeteering is so good in that show. Like I literally forget that like Rigel and Pilot aren't like people. And like, that's one of the reasons that show really works. I mean, and the growth of the characters and, you know, like even a character like, you know, like Crace, and stuff like that. Like I was sad when Virginia Hay left. That's Zahn, because I really liked her character. Chani took a little while for me to warm up to, but Chani, whatever her name was. But she eventually kind of, I came around to her. The one character that I never came around to was Stark. I thought that character was weird, and Shazbot. If you make that frelling sound again, I loved that they had their language, their weird, their curse words, and Shazbot. It's a great show. And the sets were beautiful. It felt real, lived in. Scorpius was, Head Scorpius was starting to get a little bit slapsticky, right? Right, because there was two Scorpiuses, right? There's a Scorpius, and then there's a Scorpius inside of his head. There you go. Head Scorpius in a Hawaiian shirt. Yeah. Yeah, and by the end, it started to feel like they were kind of running out of time. But you know what I'd really appreciated was, that the characters, that the show ended, and it kind of ended on a purpose, and they made their movie, and it was okay. Was Firefly too jokey for you? No. I mean, I love Firefly. I mean, I don't think Firefly was jokey. Firefly was very quippy, but I think it felt real because I feel like Malcolm Reynolds was quippy. Like that was his character. It wasn't like a joke. that was like literally the way that his character was. But it wasn't cynical, and it wasn't like making fun of itself, which I thought was great. Like one of my favorite lines is near the end of the series is where they beginning to think that Summer Glau, River, played by Summer Glau, is psychic, right? As a reader, I think is what they call her. And then like and Wash goes like wait, so like psychic? That sounds like something out of science fiction. And his wife Zoe goes, "Dear, you live on a spaceship." And he goes, "So?" Right? Like to him, living on a spaceship isn't science fiction. That's just the way that things are, you know? Yeah, I don't think no. Grimbright, definitely not. Like the characters aren't, you know, I mean, I don't know. The characters are more neutral. You know, if we're talking about like a 3x3 alignment matrix, the characters and the world is kind of more in the middle. It's not really grim bright or noble dark or any of those mixtures. It's kind of like neutral. And, you know, it's interesting from that perspective. But apparently they're trying to do an animation, you know? I mean, the world was right. It was that classic dystopian, right? Where it's like the outer people were free, but they had nothing and they lived on these barely terraformed worlds. And then the inner core worlds, you know, had all this wonderful medicine and technology, but they lived under a sort of fascist state. So, in the form of the Alliance. So, yes, I mean, there was a dystopian nature to that, right? True. Yes. When everybody tries to be, you know, the quippy character, it just becomes obnoxious, for sure. No, I'm pretty sure the Alliance was pretty fascist. At least, I mean, that was my read on it. I also think it was Joss Whedon's read on it. So, you know, I wish Ben was still around because I think Ben used to really contest that. And I think it was Ben. Maybe it was Ben. There was somebody who had a really good like essay about why Firefly isn't a Western. So to be fair, I loved all the Marvel movies until everything after Endgame. Then everything sucked. Like, I'm not even kidding. It sucked. Like, I don't know how it went from like incredible to shit. I mean, don't get me wrong. You know, not every film was a banger, but like, yeah. Yes, I'm sure Ben would say that. Yes, Ben did say that. I mean, I just remember seeing some of those movies and I was like, this is so bad. It is unwatchable. The first part refers to the characters. Are the characters grim? Are the characters noble? And then the world is either dark or bright. So the first word refers to the characters. The second word refers to the world. Right. Oh, yes, there's definitely a lost causeism to Firefly for sure. But as you've mentioned, without the racism and the slavery. Yeah, I mean, the whole thing, like integrating into the streaming and all that other stuff. And, you know, I think Thor Dark World is hated on unnecessarily. I don't think it's that bad. I don't think it's great, but I don't think it's that bad. It's like people shit on the second Avengers movie, Age of Ultron. I love Age of Ultron. I think James Spader as Ultron is probably my like favorite villain, maybe. I think I like him more than Thanos. I also thought the first Thor movie was worse than the second Thor movie. Obviously, the third Thor movie was great, but it was also kind of jokey and had whatever his name was, Tanaka, and who obviously showed that wasn't a guaranteed because he shit the bed in the fourth one, right? Thor: Love and Thunder or whatever. But I find the first Thor movie to be really unappealing and boring, and I think that I think it was kind of boring. So. But like, what else do I mean? Like, I'm trying to think of like the original core ones. Like I love Captain America. I love Winter Soldier. I mean, arguably one of the best films from the MCU. I thought Civil War was okay, not great. I thought it was okay. I thought it focused too much on the ensemble cast instead of focusing on Captain America. Iron Man 1, all-time banger. Iron Man 2 and 3, I think, are kind of weak. I don't really love them, personally. Thor 1, Thor 2, great. Thor 3 obviously is great, but it is a very different vibe. Thor 4, terrible. Probably one of the worst movies because it came after Endgame. Who else got movies? That's it from the core one, right? The Black Widow movie was okay, but not great. Yeah, I don't know. Like Guardians of the Galaxy, I thought Ant-Man 1 and 2 were delightful films. I thought Ant-Man 3 Quantumania might have been the worst thing I've ever seen. Guardians. I actually thought the third one was overrated. I did think the third one. A lot of people talked about it, and it was just like this emotional tearjerker thing, and like all the stuff that the Guardians were doing just felt like a series of like it felt like a collection quest. I actually didn't like Guardians 3 as much as other people. I thought Guardians 1 and Guardians 2 were great. The first Doctor Strange was pretty good. But yeah, almost everything else terrible. I will say one thing. Eternals, not a good movie. Way too many characters. And to be honest with you, even though I was a comic person, I didn't know all the Eternals. But the way that they showed Makari as a speedster, in my opinion, is the best way a speedster has ever been shown on any sort of film or live action, right? It's just I think the slow motion thing is so played out, and using her to find stuff and run stuff and save people, awesome. But her going at fast speed was cool. I hate the DCU or whatever, their version of Flash running at light speed, and he's just looks like it's so stupid. The DCU is terrible. I don't think I liked any of those movies. I stopped watching them completely. I don't think I've seen half of them at this point. They're the worst things I've ever seen. Yeah. Yeah, and the Eternals had that, they threw in that random deviant bad guy that really didn't do anything. It was just so easy. Gal Gadot is terrible. Just terrible. Also, I'm going to say something here. It's not going to make me a lot of fans. I don't like Batman. I just don't like Batman. I don't like Batman. I only like Batman. Okay? There's only one instance where I like Batman. The only instance where I like Batman is from the Justice League and the Justice League Unlimited cartoon series. That's it. The original Batman cartoon series. Certainly any of the original live actions, terrible. The Michael Keaton Batman, no. Val Kilmer Batman, no. George Clooney Batman, no. Ben Affleck Batman, no. Okay. Batman the Animated Series Batman, no. I don't like Batman the Animated Series. Full stop. But Justice League and Justice League Unlimited, badass. Batman, awesome. Batman, incredible. Some of those animated films that they've done Batman in, amazing. The Batman, I remember I liked the cartoon style of it, but I don't think I particularly like that Batman either. Young Justice is a 10 out of 10 series. They fucked it up at the end, like the last season, but like season 1 and season 2, maybe, whatever. Whenever they introduced like the light, that became terrible. But like the first season or second season of Young Justice, 10 out of 10. Absolutely fantastic. Tasty Trekkie says, "Suffer not the heretic to live," in the super chat. I'm sorry, I don't like Batman. You don't like Batman. You don't like Batman the animated series. You speak heresy. Batman, Superman, and Supergirl was a comic book, but then they made it into a cartoon. Batman's cool in that one. That actually is one of my favorite Batman moments. It's actually one of my favorite comic book moments in the thing here, which is I think it's Batman v Superman, Supergirl or something like that. TLDR, Darkseid kidnaps and brainwashes Kara Zor-El and turns her into an evil Zor-El. And Superman goes to stop him or whatever, and Batman goes there. And they go to Apocalypse, okay? And Apocalypse has these basically planet killers called Hellspores. And basically they're like nuclear bombs that can destroy an entire planet. And, he keeps them in his armory. And Batman goes with Superman, and he's fighting the highest level people of whatever. And he goes to Darkseid, and he basically says, release Kara Zor-El. And he goes, no. And he's like, or else. He goes, or else what? He goes, or else. He goes, one Hellspore can destroy a planet. What would happen if all 1,000 of them went off at once? And he goes, you're lying. And he goes, the code is XYZ XX554. And Darkseid starts beating the shit out of Batman. And in the comic book, Batman's having this internal monologue where he's like, Darkseid is a strategist like me. He already knows he's lost. I'm just going to let him vent a little bit so that, I get what I want. And basically he throws Batman down and he goes, if anyone else had tried that gambit, they would have lost because I would have called their bluff. He goes, but you're Batman and you wouldn't bluff. So I respect the fact that you would literally blow up yourself and this world just to get your way, basically. And he's like, you're a human. You kill your own kind. I can't fuck with that. And so he releases them. He releases Kara Zor-El. That was a cool Batman moment. That's when I like Batman. That's a cool Batman moment. His uncompromising moments, that's what I really appreciate about Batman. It's that's a cool moment. Anyway, which is funny because one of the things I'm going to talk about eventually, when I start talking about Shadow Dark, is the mistake that people make with OSR games, is that dungeon games are all about your character becoming Batman, and you get rich and you get a lot of cool tech, aka magic items. The problem is that a lot of people turn their characters to Superman, and Superman isn't really interesting in a dungeon. Or worse, they don't become Superman or Batman. And a lot of people just keep their characters these shitty, snot moppers. And they they act as if like the really boring shit that you get from your class from your OSR game are somehow going to keep your character interested in the game. So you can't just leave them the way that they are. And if you turn them into Superman, the dungeon quickly becomes very unappealing. Instead, you need to make your characters become Batman. They need to become rich. They have to have a lot of cool tech and gear and weird devices, okay? And they have to think their way out of problems, right? And sure, they might be pretty good at fighting, but at the end of the day, you're just a guy. Or you're just a gal. And that's what's important. So OSR games are about becoming Batman. Not becoming Superman, and not just staying a schlub. And I think that's a mistake that most people make. I think a lot of people make that mistake with OSR games in particular, not just mega dungeons, but the whole kit and caboodle is they look at these characters and they go, yeah, I'm level 3. And it's like, okay, what do you got? And you're like, nothing. I have a sword. Like, so how long have you been playing the game? You're like, I've been playing for 3 months. And you're like, well, what did you get when you leveled up? Nothing. I got a couple more hit points. And you're like, and you're still playing this game? Yes. And I'm like, what is wrong with you? Anyways, that's one of my takes. Oh man, it's 3 a.m. Is that how the song goes? It's 3 a.m. I must be lonely, huh? Heaven, she said, baby, I am. Well, I can't help but be scared. I said, oh. Man, Matchbox 20. What a band. I think he's Canadian. Is Rob Thomas Canadian? Maybe he's not. You remember Treant Monk talking about 3.x wizards as Batman in the forums back in the day. Yeah. Yes, Matchbox 20, another media I enjoy as a teenage boy edgelord. That was one of the first CDs I ever bought. Okay. What was the name of that album? Is it Yourself or Somebody Like You? Is that the name of it? Matchbox 20. I want to say that that's it. I could be wrong. For some odd reason, that's what's sticking out in my head. Yep, Yourself or Someone Like You. Wow. I can't believe I fucking got that. That's sick. I own that album, and I own Mad Season. I enjoyed Matchbox 20. I think Push and Back to Good are pretty dang good songs. The wizard is Batman. Everyone else is their sidekicks. Yeah, to a certain extent. Yeah, I've gone a little bit longer than hours. Well, we're wrapping up here. Yes, I agree. I think people try too hard to make him, fit in. And it's like, look, he's hanging out with the Flash, and honestly, the Flash should just be enough to deal with everything all at once, everywhere all at once, every time. If the Flash did what the Flash actually does, he would just solve all problems instantaneously. Fun story. So in Mutes and Masterminds, which is based off of D20, which is based off of 3rd edition, the way that they handled super speed was really interesting. Everything in that game worked off of ranks, and the ranks were like exponential. So like rank 1 might be like 5 feet, and then like rank 2 might be 10 feet, but like rank 3 is like 25 feet, and then like rank 4 is like 100 feet, and like rank 5 is like a quarter mile, and then rank 6 is like 5 miles, and rank 7 is like it just scales like that. So having like 10 ranks in super speed would let you do something like you could make a search check, but like in an AoE, and like the radius was like 50 miles. So like a speedster could like make a search check, in a round, but like the radius was like 50 miles, which I always thought was really clever. Another thing that they did in that game is like a super speedster could like basically they could turn their punch into like an AoE attack. Because like basically their punch was like a fireball, because it was basically like it's a mechanics first game. And so the way that you expressed their super speed as a damaging effect is you expressed it as ranged area physical damage. But like in the fiction, your character is just running around punching everybody. But in the game, it's expressed as you hit everybody at once, everybody make a reflex save. It's actually pretty cool. I mean, it's horribly painfully mechanical and simulationist and grindy, and it's not at all like the vibe that you want from a superhero game, but it's pretty clever. Anyways, so that's gonna do it for me for tonight. Thank you everybody for hanging out with me. This was a lot of fun. I really appreciate y'all stopping by and hanging out with me on a late night. Again, I'm gonna be back. I'm back for the next couple months. I've got NightCon / Origins at middle end of June. But other than that, I'm not going on any trips. Nothing planned. So we're gonna be doing our normal Tuesday, Thursday streams, but late night, Sunday, middle of the day, Monday, these things can happen. So, stay frosty, stay on your toes. I know we didn't do a lot of streams last month, and I'm going to try to not make up for it 100%, but, I like talking to you all, and I like jamming with you guys and being nerds with you. And it's always fun to find our community out there in the interwebs. So I appreciate you. And I just want to say thank you so much, and I'll see you next time on The Night's the Last Call. Good night, everybody.